The entire extravagant wedding had always seemed absurd to Anna from the very beginning, and now, as she finally got a closer look at the details, she became even more convinced of it. Although Anna was neither a designer nor a decorator, she had a sense of taste, and it was telling her that the gigantic wedding arch adorned with absurd golden roses and lilies, tables with enormous lace napkins, and wreaths hanging on the walls made of the same flowers as the arches were all a nightmare. Suddenly, she felt a strong impact on her shoulder. "Excuse me, please," a passing waiter shouted in alarm. Anna looked at his retreating back. They could have at least left them in proper black and white uniforms, something sensible in this absurd, pseudo-wedding masquerade. But no, the waitstaff had been dressed in shiny gold vests with huge silver buttons. "It's like I'm in a very cheap parody movie about the lives of the rich," Anna thought. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the intention. Anna. A high-pitched female voice sounded so unexpectedly and so close to her ear that Anna nearly jumped. She managed to control herself at the last moment. It wouldn't be dignified for the bride of one of the wealthiest men in the city to be startled by the voice of the wedding organizer, even if she was the worst one in the world. "What is it, Kate?" Anna asked as diplomatically as possible. "It's time to get ready to walk out, Anna. Come with me." The woman forced a smile onto her face, revealing small white teeth, waved her hands in a strangely exaggerated manner, and bent in a half-bow, indicating the direction they should go. "She's so creepy," Anna thought, with her overly lacquered hair, high-heeled shoes on 10-centimeter spikes, an expensive designer suit that doesn't fit her bony figure, and a completely artificial face. How old is she? 32, 54. Both options seem equally likely. Nevertheless, Anna obediently followed her into the room from which she was supposed to emerge to the groom for the marriage ceremony. Traditionally, the father should escort the bride to the groom. If there is no father, then a stepfather, brother, grandfather, uncle, or any male relative will do. Anna, being an orphan, had no male relatives. After a lengthy discussion, it was decided that she would walk arm in arm with Derek, one of the groom's friends. Derek was a whole head taller than Anna, so it felt a bit awkward for her to hold on to him. However, even in this position, she managed to notice that his forearm, on which he placed her hand, was trembling ever so slightly. "He knows," Anna thought. "Well, Derek, I thought you were a good person." To the solemn music, they made their way to a small platform. The closer they got, the more the platform resembled a bizarre structure from some old parody film. Once again, it was adorned with an abundance of golden and silver flowers. "I wouldn't be surprised if I develop an allergy to gold and silver after this day," Anna thought. Finally, the endless procession came to an end. Derek, his already noticeably trembling, sweaty hand, placed little Anna's hand into the groom's cold hand. Anna raised her head and looked at Michael. Until the very last moment, she had still held on to the hope that she was wrong, but one look into his black, impenetrable eyes was enough to confirm that this was indeed happening. Anna took a deep breath, straightened her back, and prepared herself. She didn't have to wait long. Michael smiled, turned halfway so that he could be seen equally well by the gathered guests and Anna, and began to speak. "Dear guests," he addressed the crowd. A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience. Typically, the groom's speech doesn't kick off the wedding ceremony. "Dear bride," Michael even gave her a mocking half-bow. Anna smiled sweetly. He shouldn't figure it out prematurely. "Today, we've all gathered here to witness me marrying Anna." Michael nodded in Anna's direction and continued. "As you know, I am a successful entrepreneur, the son of one of the wealthiest men in the city, and I'm marrying a little poor orphan who works as a cleaner in my office. Quite a fairy tale, isn't it?" At these words, he turned to face Anna and looked into her eyes. Though she was prepared for it, shivers ran down her spine at the glassy, cold look in his eyes. But she held her ground and didn't avert her gaze. Michael went on. "But in the real world, there are no fairy tales. There's only reality, starkly different from the fantasies of little girls. Those who have known me for a long time remember that I loved pranks since childhood. As I grew up, mere joking lost its appeal to me, so I decided to create whole stories, with their own meaning and moral. I wanted my pranks to be remembered for a long time by a very large number of people. And most importantly, I wanted them to shatter some established stereotypes." Anna continued to smile. Honestly, she was getting a little tired of this forced smile, which now resembled more of a grimace, but it was too early to reveal her cards. So, my lovely Anna, Michael, still smiling, turned to her. This is a prank. I'm not marrying you. The portion of the guests who were unaware of the situation gasped in astonishment and started whispering among themselves. Out of the corner of her eye, Anna noticed the expression of absolute genuine surprise frozen on Kate's face. Well, Anna thought, on one hand, it's nice that all this time she wasn't pretending and genuinely didn't know what Michael was going to say. On the other hand, if she was planning this whole thing as a real wedding, she truly is the worst wedding organizer in the world. The other part of the guests, mostly the groom's friends and their companions, were, of course, aware of what was happening. And now, with no need to pretend anymore, they burst into joyful laughter. Anna also noticed that she didn't see the groom's parents in the crowd. It was intriguing. Had he concealed the fact of the fake wedding from them, or had he persuaded them not to come under some pretext? It was unlikely they were taking part in the prank or approved of such antics from their heir. Speechless from surprise, my love, Michael asked. Though, I think I know what your question would be. He theatrically cleared his throat and adopted a high-pitched voice, clearly mimicking Anna. Michael, how could you do this to me? We love each other so much. Why? The groom's friends laughed even louder, and their girlfriends joined in. Only Derek stood there with a stony face, and it was unclear whether he wanted to run away or just didn't care. Anna thought this felt a bit like a zoo gone wild, where orangutans, hyenas, and a couple of zebras all went mad simultaneously. Michael continued in his own voice. Anna, so that you and others like you know your place. So that 1,000 other little, pitiful, ignorant orphans stop deluding themselves into thinking they'll become millionaires' wives and dreaming of how they'll go from being cleaners to princesses someday. So that you all forget your Cinderella dreams and instead scrub the floors and take out the trash more diligently. Anna subtly turned her head and saw several phones recording the scene. Of course, this video would soon spread all over the internet. Michael would stop at nothing less, and most likely, at least a couple of people were broadcasting it live. Well, she was completely fine with that. Anna cleared her throat discreetly, checking her own voice. She needed to be clearly heard and said, Yes, Michael, I do have a couple of questions for you. Let's start with the first one. What made you think that you and your buddies are the smartest ones here? Anna would never forget the circumstances of her meeting with Michael. Later, as she recalled that day, she realized that fate had been trying to tell her not to take the job at that company. However, it's easy to evaluate events when some time has passed. Yet, to orient oneself in the moment and assess the situation while being right in the middle of it is much more challenging. Even before her interview, Anna had asked her best friend, Molly, "Are you sure you want to work there? The company has a bit of a reputation." I looked up reviews from former employees, and most of them say the boss is a spoiled rich kid and a lunatic who loves showmanship. Anna laughed it off, saying, "Do they really write that?" "Yes," Molly replied. "Well, fine. I'll be cleaning floors there, not having conversations with the boss. Hopefully, I won't even see him." "I don't know," Molly said doubtfully. "You'll be there all day. You'll probably run into him one way or another." Anna shrugged it off. "Even if I do, you know, people like him don't notice people like me. What's he going to do to me? Spill a bucket of dirty water on me? That's hardly dignified for a boss. He's probably just teasing his top managers or department heads and other subordinates. A cleaner is unlikely to pique his interest." In the orphanage, Anna was considered a troubled child. Everyone thought so, except for one caregiver, Kim. She started working the year and month 13-year-old Anna arrived at the orphanage. 13 was already a teenager, and Anna remembered her life before the orphanage very well. She lived with her mom in a poor neighborhood of the city, in an old dormitory building. The dormitory had once belonged to a factory where Anna's grandparents, her grandmother and grandfather, had worked. It was where Anna's only daughter, Rachel, was born. A few years later, the factory closed due to numerous safety violations in handling chemicals. This revelation came after factory workers started going to the hospital with various symptoms. Among the affected were Rachel's parents. The factory underwent inspection, and ultimately, They found so many violations that it was easier to shut it down than to fix everything. They didn't evict the former workers from the dormitory because, in reality, the dormitory was of no use to anyone. However, Anna's grandparents didn't live there for long. When Rachel turned 18, both of her grandparents passed away. For a year, left alone at such a young age, Rachel arranged her life as best she could. After finishing school, she didn't apply anywhere and started working as a cashier in the nearest 24-hour convenience store. Most of the customers were fellow dormitory residents, the majority of whom couldn't find work after the factory closed. Among the regular customers was Anna's future father, Kevin. He took a liking to the young cashier, and he started visiting the store almost every day. After some courtship, everyone in the dormitory knew that Rachel from the second floor was dating Kevin from the fourth floor. For a while, the young couple even considered exchanging their rooms in different parts of the building for adjacent ones, so they could tear down the wall and combine them into a cozy little apartment. However, their happiness was short-lived. A few months after getting to know Rachel, Kevin was offered a good job in another country. At that time, he was only 23, and the prospect of family life, which had initially seemed so appealing, had recently lost its appeal. After some thought, weighing the pros and cons, Kevin sold his room in the dormitory at a disadvantage but quickly packed his things and left, leaving a short note for the lovesick Rachel. "I'm sorry. I rushed things and made a mistake. You're a good girl, but I'm not ready for a family yet. Please don't look for me. I wish you happiness." For Rachel, who thought she had finally found someone she could rely on after her parents' death, this news was a real shock. An even bigger shock came when she realized she was pregnant a few weeks later. Feelings for Kevin, and perhaps hope that he might change his mind and return, still lingered within her, so Rachel decided to keep the child. When Anna remembered her mother, there was always an image in her mind of a woman perpetually waiting for something or someone. Pale, thin, always somewhat disheveled, with a vacant, dreamy look in her eyes, Rachel worked at the store, which continued to be frequented by residents of the dormitory and neighboring houses. After breaking up with Kevin, she never got married, but from time to time, one of the store's visitors ended up in their small room. Anna had gotten used to this from childhood, and when she started school and began interacting with other kids, she was even surprised that the other girls and boys had only one dad who lived with them all the time. However, she never called those men dad. They were uncles. Uncle Corey, Uncle Lars, Uncle Lucas, Uncle Paul. In general, they were good people. They just liked to drink a lot. Anna grew particularly fond of Uncle Joel. He was tall, strong, bearded, and only about 8 years older than her mom. He hardly drank at all, worked as an electrician, and was very cheerful. He could probably fix anything in the world, from a bathroom faucet to Anna's beloved and only Barbie doll. Uncle Joel taught Anna how to ride a bicycle, which he found on the garbage dump right behind their building and fixed. Uncle Joel showed her how and where to hit boys if they tried to bully her. Uncle Joel cooked dinner and helped Anna with her homework when Rachel had the night shift. "I want you to stay with us forever," Anna once said to him. "I really want that too, kiddo," he replied, affectionately running his hand through the girl's hair. Indeed, among all of Mom's suitors, he lasted the longest, almost 3 years. He would have continued living with them if it weren't for Mom. Perhaps there are people who simply convince themselves that they cannot be happy, whether consciously or not. They direct all their efforts into remaining unhappy, and if, by some chance, they do find happiness, they immediately start doing everything to get rid of it. That's what Rachel did as well. In the beginning, after she started dating Joel, she looked very happy. She started taking better care of herself, dressing nicer, got a new hairstyle, and even seemed to have gained some weight. New curtains appeared on the window of their room, and Rachel had a rosy glow on her face and a constant smile. However, those who say that our past leaves an indelible mark are right. If you don't break this painful connection, it will continue to affect your present for the rest of your days. The first to notice this change was Anna. Her mom began smiling less, laughing less, and going on fewer outings with her and Joel, citing tiredness from work as an excuse. Then Joel noticed it too. At first, he didn't understand what was happening and attributed it to fatigue and bad mood. "Rachel, my dear, He would say, "Let's go for a walk in the park. The weather is beautiful. I can bring a blanket and a cushion. You won't even have to walk. Just lie down and relax in the shade." Mom would weakly smile. "Thank you, my dears. Go without me. I really want some quiet time." When this started happening regularly, Joel became concerned, and Anna became scared. She was afraid he would leave them. But Joel tried. He really tried. He took on most of the household chores so that Rachel could rest. He bought her flowers, chocolates, and told her she was the best and the most beautiful, that he and Anna loved her very much. For a while, this worked, but Rachel started sinking deeper into thoughts of her unworthiness of happiness. For example, when Joel wasn't home and Rachel was alone with her daughter, Anna saw her mother standing in front of the mirror, examining herself. "How can he say he loves me? I'm old and ugly," Rachel would say. "Mom, you're very beautiful." Anna would try to argue, but Rachel would desperately shake her head. "No, no, no, you're my daughter. You love me no matter how awful I am." "Mom, Joel really loves you. It's temporary," Rachel declared. "Maybe he thinks that now, but at some point, he'll see who I really am and regret wasting so much time on us." There was no way to convince Rachel otherwise. Each time this conversation came up, it ended with a terrible outburst from her mother. During such times, Anna would go to the kitchen or even run out of the house, wandering around the dormitory until the cries and sobbing from Rachel's direction stopped. Often, during these wanderings, a neighbor's boy named Thomas would accompany her. "Are they fighting?" he would ask, nodding toward the windows. "No, Uncle Joel and Mom never fight," Anna would respond, as she was very alarmed by such an assumption. "That's for now," Thomas would assert authoritatively. "At first, they all yell, and then they either fight or break up. I know how it goes." The boy indeed had significant experience in such matters. His mother, Naomi, changed fiancés more often than Rachel, and no one stayed with her for more than a year. Anna often heard shouts from behind the wall, and Thomas himself would return home late to avoid witnessing such spectacles. Once or twice, Anna saw bruises on him. "Nonsense," the boy would dismiss, responding to Anna's timid questions. "Just got into a scuffle with some guys." That could have been true, but the girl didn't quite believe Thomas. Some of Naomi's fiancés looked perfectly capable of resorting to violence. Due to this family instability, the dreams of these kids looked quite different from those of most of their peers. "When I grow up, I want to be a long-haul truck driver," Thomas would say. "They make good money and see the world. A job and travel all in one. What's not to like?" "I want to become a doctor," Anna would reply. "Why a doctor?" "You want to torture people. Give them shots." "Not torture, but heal," Anna corrected him. "Even you, if you catch a cold on the road, I'll treat you." "Do I have to stand in line at the hospital to see you then?" "Boring." "Maybe we'll still be neighbors," Anna suggested. "Then you won't have to wait in line. Just knock on my door, and I'll come out." Thomas was horrified by such a suggestion. "Are you saying we'll still be living here, in this hole, for the rest of our lives?" "No, but I don't even know what to offer you. You're hard to please," Anna said, feeling a bit lost. "You don't want the hospital, and you refuse to live here. I think when we grow up, we should get married," Thomas declared without hesitation. "Or are you against it?" It wasn't that this proposal was unpleasant. In a way it even flattered Anna, but she couldn't agree with the boy so easily, guided by her girl's pride. "Marry you," Anna snorted. "Only if you run me over with your truck, or I get a good knock on the head. Forget it." Nevertheless, family problems occupied her thoughts much more than potential suitors during those years. The conflicts between Rachel and her common-law husband persisted. Eventually, Joel couldn't take it anymore, gathered his things, and left. Anna remembers saying goodbye to him at the playground, how she stood there hugging him and didn't want to let go. He took her by the hands, sat her down on a bench, and sat next to her. "Anna," he said, "I'm really sorry that things didn't work out between your mom and me. Nobody is to blame here. It's just that we're very different people. Your mom is a good person, and you're the most wonderful girl I've ever met. I would really like you to be my daughter and teach you many things." Tears streamed down Anna's face from surprise, but she tried to remember every word he said, even though she didn't understand half of it. "Don't live in the past, let it go. Don't let anything terrible or bad that happens to you affect your future. Never think that life sends you trials you can't overcome, and never think that every person who comes into your life, be it a friend, husband, or lover, is your last chance. Anna was so surprised that she even stopped crying. Although she didn't understand much of what Joel wanted to convey, she still tried to remember every word. Don't let anyone hurt you, and even more importantly, don't let anyone make you believe that you're worse than others or unworthy of something. He paused and looked at her sadly. Will we never see each other again? Anna asked. I don't know, Joel honestly replied. Maybe someday we'll meet again, but for now, I'm going to another city. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too, little one. They held each other tightly, and then Joel left. Anna sat on the bench for a long time until it was dark, and when she finally got home, she saw her mother curled up on the bed. She wasn't sleeping or crying. She just lay there, hugging herself and staring blankly at a fixed point. In the morning, when Anna woke up and began to get ready for school, she saw that Rachel was still lying in the same position. Mom, don't you have to go to work? Anna asked. Rachel looked at her with a heavy, distant gaze, as if she didn't immediately recognize who was addressing her and why. I think I'm sick, she croaked after a while. I'll take a sick day. You go to school. For a while, Anna even tried to convince herself that her mother would feel better after Joel's departure. After all, she had been arguing with him so much lately and had wanted him to leave. Maybe she felt bad with him, so it would make sense for her to feel better now. But it turned out to be quite the opposite. Rachel seemed to have fallen into some kind of trance or sleepwalking state. She went to work, even did some household chores, but she did it all mechanically, without being present in the moment. Anna realized that she couldn't reach her mother. About a year and a half later, Rachel fell seriously ill. At first, Anna tried to take care of herself, doing everything a 13-year-old girl could. Then she called a doctor to their home, who said that her mother had pneumonia and needed to be hospitalized urgently. Rachel refused, saying that she was fine, but for the first time in her life, Anna threw a real tantrum. Her mother, who seemed to come to her senses, had to give in. Rachel spent 3 weeks in the hospital, and Anna visited her every day. She could see that her mother had no desire to fight the illness and had an idea of how it would end. But nevertheless, one day when she went to the hospital, her mother's attending physician took her into his office, sat her down, and very gently told her that, unfortunately, despite all the treatment, her mother's body had been weak, not resisting the disease at all, and she had passed away during the night. Anna burst into tears. After that, she ended up in a children's home, and she remembered Joel's words. Don't live in the past. Don't let the past affect my life. Although Anna was only 13, she understood why her mother had died. She had become trapped in the past, feeling unworthy and weak, and she believed she didn't deserve happiness. Anna had been dependent on her, unable to do anything, but now everything would change. Now only she would decide what her happiness depended on. No more adults making decisions for her. She used to think her mother was an adult, and therefore, she must be smart and know what she was doing. But her mother had died because she didn't know what to do. Anna, a young female voice called. The girl lifted her head. She had become so lost in her thoughts that she hadn't noticed the car stopping or the door opening. A young, smiling woman was looking at her. Anna, the woman repeated. Yes, it's me. Pleasure to meet you, the woman said. You can get out now. Anna stepped out of the car and saw that she was in front of a large 2-story building made of red brick. Am I going to live here? She asked the woman. Yes. My name is Kim. I'm your caretaker. Pleasure to meet you. Let's go. I'll give you a tour. Kim liked Anna from the first moment she saw her. She treated her with ease and simplicity, not portraying herself as a strict or arrogant teacher. She calmly answered any questions and was honest enough, sometimes even overly so. Will I stay here until I'm legally an adult? Anna asked on her very first day. Why do you think so? Kim asked, surprised. I'm already grown up, and they don't usually take kids my age. According to statistics, yes, that's true. Foster parents mostly prefer younger children. Anna nodded. Her situation suited her just fine. Who knows what kind of people she might have ended up with, and she was confident she could handle the rules of the orphanage. In any case, Kim said, "We'll do everything we can to make you feel good and comfortable here. Of course, we can't replace your parents, but I promise I'll do everything within my power." "Thank you," Anna replied quietly. Overall, she remembered the years spent in the orphanage as not the worst. Of course, not all the caregivers were as kind and good as Kim. Not all the residents were pleasant, friendly, or honest. However, Anna had set a firm goal for herself and stuck to it. She wouldn't allow anyone to mistreat her. In fact, it was clear from her expression that joking around with this girl was a bad idea. Kim often stood up for her favorite and occasionally asked her to be a bit more lenient. She remained the only caregiver who could have any influence on the stubborn teenager. Even the strictest teachers found it difficult to deny that Anna possessed many good qualities. She was intelligent, hardworking when she saw the value in the work, and honest. She excelled in both the humanities and the sciences. The only exception was when there was a conflict with a teacher. She would stop studying that subject, and Kim had to intervene to reconcile the parties to some extent. If she liked the teacher, she would study diligently and receive top marks. After completing the 9th grade, she enrolled in a medical college, passing her exams better than anyone else. There, she enjoyed everything: the challenging yet fascinating anatomy and Latin, practical experience in hospitals, the doctors who were sometimes stern and sometimes jovial, depending on their mood and workload. In college, she met Molly, her best friend. It was during their first practical training. According to the plan, future nurses were supposed to learn how to administer injections, fill out documentation, and dress wounds. The first-year students were assigned to different departments, where they would learn the intricacies of nursing for the next few weeks. Anna and Molly were sent to the endocrinology department. It was a large, old place that hadn't been renovated in years. The head nurse decided that they had enough nurses and assigned the girls to clean the patient rooms. Anna and Molly were surprised, exchanged glances, and though their assignments were entirely different, they didn't argue. They took buckets, rags, and worked diligently all day. "Maybe the first day is like this for everyone," Molly suggested. Anna shrugged. "Either that or they think they've got free labor for dirty work for the next few weeks." "No way." Molly unexpectedly swung her cloth so fiercely that splashes flew all over the room. "I came here to learn how to give injections, not scrub floors." Anna was surprised by Molly's outburst. Molly appeared petite, fragile, and modest, so it was nice to see a spark of fighting spirit in her. "Let's propose talking to the head nurse tomorrow, if, of course, they make us clean the rooms again." The next day, they were once again handed buckets and mops and sent to clean the head of the department's office. "Excuse me," Molly said politely but firmly, "but this isn't part of our training program." She opened her notebook and showed it to the woman to whom they'd been assigned. "See, it says here how many and what procedures we need to perform, but there's no mention of cleaning floors." "What is this?" the woman complained. "First-year students these days resist everything. They don't respect their seniors, they argue, and they don't want to work. In the past, whatever we told them to do, they did without question. But these, we're not refusing to work." Anna interjected. "It's just that our task isn't to fill in for the shortage of junior medical staff, but to learn what will be our profession in the future." Kim paused and then added, "We'll make sure you feel good and comfortable here. Of course, we can't replace your parents, but I promise I'll do everything within my power." "Thank you," Anna replied quietly. Overall, she remembered the years spent in the orphanage as not the worst. Of course, not all the caregivers were as kind and good as Kim. Not all the residents were pleasant, friendly, or honest. However, Anna had set a firm goal for herself and stuck to it. She wouldn't allow anyone to mistreat her. In fact, it was clear from her expression that joking around with this girl was a bad idea. Kim often stood up for her favorite and occasionally asked her to be a bit more lenient. She remained the only caregiver who could have any influence on the stubborn teenager. Even the strictest teachers found it difficult to deny that Anna possessed many good qualities. She was intelligent, hardworking when she saw the value in the work, and honest. She excelled in both the humanities and the sciences. The only exception was when there was a conflict with a teacher. She would stop studying that subject, and Kim had to intervene to reconcile the parties to some extent. If she liked the teacher, she would study diligently and receive top marks. After completing the 9th grade, she enrolled in a medical college, passing her exams better than anyone else. There, she enjoyed everything: the challenging yet fascinating anatomy and Latin, practical experience in hospitals, the doctors who were sometimes stern and sometimes jovial, depending on their mood and workload. In college, she met Molly, her best friend. It was during their first practical training. According to the plan, future nurses were supposed to learn how to administer injections, fill out documentation, and dress wounds. The first-year students were assigned to different departments, where they would learn the intricacies of nursing for the next few weeks. Anna and Molly were sent to the endocrinology department. It was a large, old place that hadn't been renovated in years. The head nurse decided that they had enough nurses and assigned the girls to clean the patient rooms. Anna and Molly were surprised, exchanged glances, and though their assignments were entirely different, they didn't argue. They took buckets, rags, and worked diligently all day. Maybe the first day is like this for everyone, Molly suggested. Anna shrugged. Either that or they think they've got free labor for dirty work for the next few weeks. No way. Molly unexpectedly swung her cloth so fiercely that splashes flew all over the room. I came here to learn how to give injections. The nurse, muttering something about selfishness and insolence under her breath, hurried off to complain to the head nurse. She called the girls to her office, carefully reviewed their practice journals, apologized, and assigned them to assist the nurses. The girls quickly realized that Molly and Anna were genuinely interested in the practice, so they taught them all the necessary skills in just a couple of days, allowing Molly and Anna to spend the remaining time calmly sipping tea in the nurses' station, which suited them just fine. It was great to feel like real nurses. During this practice, the two girls became friends, and throughout their education, they tried to stick together. After graduation, when they could no longer stay in the college dorm, the girls pooled their resources and rented an apartment. From there, their career paths diverged. Despite their seemingly similar personalities, Molly and Anna viewed life quite differently. Right after graduation, Molly got a job as an operating room nurse in the city's largest hospital, where she continued to work to this day. Anna, on the other hand, frequently changed jobs. Her determination to assert her independence or compromise often got her into conflicts. If she didn't like something, she would start arguing, and it often ended in disputes with her bosses, who would tell her, "If you don't like it, quit." Anna would indeed leave, leading her to a situation where she was forced to take a job as a cleaner in a company whose manager had a rather questionable reputation. On her first day at work, Anna arrived on time, listened to the relatively simple instructions, and found the cleaning supplies on the ground floor, not far from the entrance. The first cleaning in the office had to be done before the start of the workday, and the second after everyone dispersed. Additionally, throughout the day, she was responsible for maintaining cleanliness in the bathrooms, the kitchen, and doing a bit of tidying up in the office. At first glance, everything seemed straightforward, and Anna thought she might be lucky with this job. She quickly completed the initial cleaning, just as the workday was about to begin, and decided to continue in the kitchen, reasoning that there wouldn't be anyone there in the morning. However, she was mistaken. The morning has just begun, and the employees are already drinking coffee. A pleasant male voice sounded behind her. Anna turned around and saw a tall, handsome dark-haired man with a casually unbuttoned collar, dressed in jeans and a blue shirt. "I don't work here," Anna said. The man raised an eyebrow. "Did you just come in off the street for coffee?" Anna hesitated for a moment. "I'm sorry, I misspoke. I do work here, but as a cleaner. I'm not here for coffee. I'm here to clean." He nodded thoughtfully, surveying the kitchen. "Perhaps so. If it becomes a little cleaner here, I'd be very grateful." "I think so too," Anna replied. The man carefully looked her up and down, making the girls feel slightly uncomfortable. "Even though you've come here with the noble goal of cleaning, I suggest we start this day with coffee. My treat." Anna shrugged. "I won't say no. What's your name, my lovely Cinderella?" the man asked while simultaneously starting the coffee machine. "Anna, and yours?" I'm Michael. Nice to meet you. Seems like today is your first day on the job, right? The man inquired. That's correct. How about you? He grinned. A little longer. And how's the job? I like it. It's fun here. Anna took the offered cup and took a sip. The coffee was just right, hot, aromatic, and strong. I never thought working in an office could be fun, Anna said. Michael shrugged. I believe it all depends on us. I know how to bring some fun into my life. That's a good quality, and he acknowledged. Very much so. Is this your first job, Anna? He asked unexpectedly. Anna snorted. I think it's my 8th or 9th. Wow, all of them as a cleaner? No, they were different. Actually, I graduated from medical college. Wow, that's impressive. What's your specialization? I'm a nurse. Sounds sexy, Michael remarked. And here we go, Anna replied. She stood up abruptly, went to the sink, washed her cup, and reached for the cloth she had set aside when Michael walked in. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, he said. He sighed, placed the cup in the sink, and left. Anna began a thorough cleaning of the kitchen, where it seemed like no one had ever cleaned. At first glance, everything didn't seem too bad, but upon closer inspection, you could spot coffee cup stains, coffee and sugar spills, cookie crumbs, and a thick layer of dust on top of the fridge and microwave. And it cleaned the kitchen to a point where you could put it up for sale. She finished closer to lunchtime, just as other employees started to arrive. Good morning. A pleasant woman in her 40s greeted Anna politely. Are you our new cleaner? Anna nodded. Hello, yes, my name is Anna. I'm Kristen. Thank you for cleaning the kitchen. It seems like it hasn't been cleaned in a year. That's my job, Anna replied. Kristen put the kettle on, retrieved a large cup from the cupboard with a portrait of a man and 2 10-year-old boys printed on it. Would you like some tea, Anna? No, thank you. How do you like it here? Anna shrugged. Seems okay, but it's my first day, and I hadn't had a chance to get to know anyone yet. Oh, I see. I hope you'll like it here, Kristen replied. I hope so too. I met a strange young man in the kitchen this morning, but I couldn't figure out who he was. Kristen smiled, got up, tossed a tea bag into the cup, filled it with hot water, and returned to her seat. What's your mysterious new acquaintance's name? Michael. Anna noticed Kristen's eyebrows raise. Then the woman frowned, but she didn't say anything. Do you know him? Anna asked. Kristen pursed her lips. In our office, there's only one person with that name. That's Michael, our boss. Oh, Anna could only exclaim. She had been warned about the boss. Well, I need to go, Kristen said, hastily getting up and pouring out the tea she hadn't finished. Nice to meet you, Anna. Interesting. Is the boss really so scary that just mentioning his name kills people's appetite? Anna thought. If so, I need to be on my guard. The rest of the day went smoothly. Anna watered the plants in the lounge area, wiped their leaves, and collected the dried ones. She also checked the men's and women's restrooms a few times, thankfully finding nothing unusual there. In the evening, after everyone had left, she went through the office one more time with a cloth. It seemed like there wouldn't be too much work. So, how was your first day? Molly asked as they sat down for dinner. Anna shrugged. You know, not bad at all. There isn't too much work. It's just a shame that it takes the whole day. It would be great to get it all done in a couple of hours in the morning and go home. Molly smiled understandingly. I know what you mean. Some shifts are like that, no time to sit down. And others, you just wander from corner to corner all night, wishing you could be sure nothing would happen so you could go home. It's frustrating to waste time. Yeah, it is. By the way, I met the boss. On your first day. Is that the one they wrote about in the reviews? The one they said was a psycho? Well, are there healthy psychos? And it couldn't resist poking fun at her friend. But after so many years of friendship, Molly just let comments like that slide. So, what's he like? Molly asked. Anna pursed her lips. It's hard to say. On the outside, he's quite attractive. Oh, really? Come on, let's not go there. Let me go in order. It's hard to judge his character. He doesn't seem dumb, and you can have a conversation with him, but at the same time, there's some kind of coarseness about him, you know, and vulgarity that definitely doesn't do him any favors. Plus, I met a woman from the office. Her name is Kristen, and she practically twitched when I mentioned the boss. Molly frowned. If we sum up all the information we have about him at this point, it's easy to conclude that he's definitely not the nicest guy around. Be careful, Anna. Anna snorted. Molly, I lived in the roughest neighborhood in town. I spent 5 years in an orphanage and worked in the worst hospitals with alcoholics and drug addicts. Do you think some rich kid who thinks he's the center of the universe will scare me? Her friend laughed. I have no doubt about your people skills when it comes to dealing with homeless folks and alcoholics. But mean, wealthy, and spoiled bosses are a completely different league. Molly, stop trying to teach me. Anna took in a deep breath and was about to start explaining that she was a grown woman who could handle dealing with management on her own, when Molly suddenly banged her hand on the table. No, Anna, listen to me. This time, slamming the door and quitting at the slightest provocation won't work for you. Your employment history looks so bad that not a single hospital will risk hiring you as a nurse anymore, even with the staffing shortage we have. You are already forced to work as a cleaner. Doesn't that give you any thoughts? Anna frowned but remained silent. Her friend was right. You're my friend, and I'll always support you, Molly continued. But there's a limit to everything. You need to pay for your apartment, buy groceries, and eventually think about your future. Anna took a deep breath. I understand, she finally said. You're right. As always, I'll try to stick with this job. So, try not to get into any conflicts with anyone there, Molly insisted. Okay, I won't. And to do that, try to interact with people as little as possible, Molly added, especially with that Michael. I'll do just that, my friend, Anna smiled. All right, enough about me. Tell me, how was your corporate party? Molly adjusted her hair and took a sip of tea. Nothing special, really. Same old, same old. Everyone got drunk, confessed their love to each other, kissed, danced. Surgeons flirted with nurses and interns, and the head of the anesthesiology department dragged another young doctor away. Who a guy. Wow, was it that endoscopist? His name is Ben, right? Molly shook her head. No, that was a month ago, and she got tired of him already. Now, she's into a radiologist. The girls laughed. Molly's hospital, where she worked, was familiar to Anna and felt like home. She had completed most of her internships there and worked as a nurse for a while. She left after one of the doctors tried to turn their relationship from professional to personal without her consent. When she complained to her supervisor, he sighed and said, Anna, come on. It was just a small misunderstanding. That's how things work here. Will he face any consequences for it? She asked. For what? Nothing happened. That's because I didn't allow it. Well, that's it. That conversation was the end of it, and the next day, Anna quit, but she still found Molly's updates interesting. All right, her friend said. Enough discussing someone else's personal life. Only those who don't have one do that. Meeting us, Anna said triumphantly, raising her teacup like a glass. Molly rolled her eyes. If she joins us, you and I are going to a club this weekend. That's a fantastic idea, but my paycheck won't be here for a while. Anna replied, we will need your paycheck. The club owner is my former patient. I once dressed his wound. We struck up a conversation, and he gave me his number, saying I could bring my friends there anytime. Entry and drinks are on the house. Well, Anna sighed. There are definitely some advantages to working in a hospital, at least in terms of connections. I doubt I'll meet anyone useful at my job. Don't count it out just yet. The next day, after Anna finished the morning cleaning, a woman who coordinated the office's activities approached her and said that Michael wanted a thorough cleaning of his office today. Should I do it in the evening so as not to disturb him while he's working? Anna asked. No. Michael wanted you to start first thing in the morning. All right, I'll get to it. In the end, bosses have their quirks, and her job was to silently work. Oh, our lovely new cleaner. Michael greeted her cheerfully. I'm glad to see you. Good day. Anna greeted him coldly. If you don't mind, I'll start with the bookshelf. Not at all, he replied. Anna went to the bookshelf and began removing numerous documents from the shelves to dust them. She could feel Michael's gaze burning into her back, but she tried not to pay attention to it. After a while, he simply sat there, watching her, and then, Apparently realizing there was no response, he started working. Once she finished with the bookshelf and moved on to the plants, Michael finally spoke up. Anna, I'd like to take you out on a date. What do you prefer, a restaurant or a movie? I'm not going on a date with you, Anna stated. Why not? You don't like me. Michael seemed surprised. I don't know you, she replied. Well, now you can get to know me. You don't know me either. That's not a problem. Anna looked at him skeptically and asked, do you ask all the cleaners out on dates? Only the ones I like. Haha, that's funny. You don't believe me, Michael asked. Why should I believe you? I don't know you. Michael burst into laughter. Well, here we are again. Back to needing to go on a date to get to know each other better. I have a lot of work to do, Anna stubbornly stated. The boss laughed. I'm not inviting you to go out during work hours. I'll wait until you finish. Thank you, but I'll need to go home afterward. Do you have a husband and kids waiting? Anna rolled her eyes. What a cliched attempt to find out my marital status. Nevertheless, it worked, Michael remarked. I didn't give you an answer. You did. I gathered that you're completely available. How did you figure that out, I wonder? Michael smirked. I'm an experienced person. There are certain signs. Anyway, that's not important. What matters is where we'll go tonight. Michael, thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it, but I can't accept. And perhaps I'll finish the cleaning later. She gathered her cleaning supplies and buckets and left. The boss didn't try to stop her. As Anna exited his office, she could feel her heart pounding and her hands trembling. She couldn't explain this reaction to herself. Anna considered herself a confident girl, and she had often received attention from guys, so it wasn't something new. But this strange date invitation from Michael made her nervous. Of course, he couldn't have made it sincerely just because he liked her. They barely knew each other, and besides, he was the company's boss. She was just a cleaner, only in her second day of work. So what was the point of inviting her on a date? To tease her? Was this some kind of prank? She should probably quit this job as soon as possible. Then Anna remembered her conversation with her friend yesterday. In addition to thoughts about needing money and how difficult it would be to find a new job, another thought suddenly crossed her mind. This job was a challenge for her. All her life, she thought she was strong and independent because she never forgave anyone for offenses and left when something didn't suit her. But what if she had been running away from problems all this time? What if Anna wasn't a strong girl, but just someone who had always been searching for the perfect conditions that didn't exist? Maybe this job could help her become truly strong, if she could endure, not run away, and stand up to Michael's suspicious behavior. Then she could continue building her life. All right, I'll just stay calm, collected, and avoid paying attention to him. I'll try to cross paths with him as infrequently as possible. Anna decided. Saying it was easy, but doing it was harder. Even though Anna tried her best to avoid encounters with her boss, she couldn't always succeed. Sometimes it seemed like he was purposefully prowling around the office like a predator tracking its prey. Whenever he saw Anna, a joyful smile would appear on his face, which annoyed her immensely. Good morning, Anna, he said on Friday. How's your first week here? Are you enjoying it? Do you have any suggestions? The toilet cleaner is very toxic, Anna replied nonchalantly. It cleans to a shine, but it makes your eyes tear and itch. Understood, Michael replied quite seriously. We'll fix that. What are your plans for tonight? I'm going to a club with a friend, Anna answered without hesitation. What club? I don't remember the name. Perhaps Magic Lounge Club. That's it. It's a very expensive and trendy club, Michael said thoughtfully, looking at Anna with curiosity and something else. Anna shrugged, as if going to such clubs was a common thing for her. You have a great time, Molly said. Thanks, Anna replied. Fortunately, at that moment, some colleagues asked the boss something, and he got distracted. Taking advantage of the situation, Anna escaped. For the rest of the workday, she kept an eye out to avoid running into her boss, but apparently, he got busy with something else because she didn't see him again that day. Anna stepped over the threshold of her apartment, closed the door, took off her shoes, walked into her room, and collapsed onto the couch. How good it was that this endless week had finally come to an end. Well, you don't look too happy, she heard her friend's cheerful voice. Yeah, Anna replied. Ready to go to the club? Right now? No, of course not, Molly replied cheerfully. Tonight. Rest up for now. Great, I'll definitely go tonight. We agreed on that. Excellent. How was your first week at work? Well, it's hard to say. And aside, the job itself isn't difficult, but I hate spending so much time in the office. What about your cute, despotic boss? Molly asked mischievously. I don't understand him. He greets me, tries to ask me out. Wow, when and where are you going? Never and nowhere. Wow, why not? Molly. Anna sat up and gave her friend an annoyed look. How do you imagine that? A cleaner and the company's CEO. Her friend shrugged. So what? He's inviting you. I don't believe it. Anna muttered. He must have some ulterior motives. What kind of motives? I don't know. Maybe he wants to make fun of me or something like that. You understand that I don't even have an appropriate dress for a restaurant of the caliber where Michael and his circle of friends go. Molly sighed. Well, I understand that. Okay, if you don't want to, you don't have to. And anyway, we need to think about where we're going tonight. The club isn't a simple one either. And aside, well, lounging around definitely wasn't an option for her. Let's go see what suitable outfits we have. The girls' wardrobe was, you could say, shared. Anna was a bit taller, while Molly had a slightly wider bust and hips. However, their clothing size was the same, as was their shoe size. Since they lived together, it was very convenient. How about this? Molly tossed a short blue dress adorned with rhinestones onto the bed. It matches the color of your eyes. It's been out of fashion for a while. And aside, although I used to love it back in the day. Yeah, I remember you used to wear it every week back then. That's true. We were in our first year of college. Exactly. What are you going to wear? Your favorite dress with the open back. Anna rummaged in the closet and pulled out the dress Molly had mentioned. No, Molly said, that one's also very old. Anna sighed and sat down on the bed. Molly, maybe we're just getting old. When was the last time we bought clothes for something other than everyday wear? Not something you could wear to work and back, but something for going out. Her friend sat down beside her. I can't even remember, she sighed. We suddenly got caught up in work and forgot how young, beautiful, and carefree we used to be. We need to revive those traditions. Anna chuckled. I totally agree. Shall we have champagne before heading to the club, like in the old days? Absolutely, Molly said with joy. I happen to have a bottle lying around somewhere. From Patience, and inquired. If only. Samuel gave it to me, but he only drinks cognac, so he handed over the champagne to me. Wow, get it out. After a couple of glasses of champagne, things felt lighter. Anna's fatigue and bad mood melted away, and getting ready became more fun. Just like in the good old days, they sat together, did their makeup, and helped each other with their hair. Choosing outfits became easier too. Both of them went with black dresses. Molly wore a short, sleeveless one that emphasized her waist, while Anna donned a knee-length straight dress with one long sleeve and one shoulder exposed. Perfect, Molly exclaimed happily, examining their reflections in the mirror. Yeah, and it chuckled mockingly. Don't laugh, it's true, her friend said seriously. By the way, whether from the inside or the outside, the club didn't look particularly posh or expensive. On the outside, it was just a small, bright neon sign with the name placed above a black metal basement door. Right behind it, in a narrow corridor, stood a bouncer, to whom Molly whispered something in his ear, after which he nodded and waved them in. Inside, the club was small, dimly lit, with low ceilings. Somewhere in the depths of the room, there was a small dense floor, with only a few people on it. The bar counter, which Molly decisively headed for, pulling Anna along, and a few tables with chairs and sofas, each separated from the others by semi-transparent curtains. Molly smiled at the bartender and whispered something in his ear, just like she did with the bouncer. He nodded, asked something, and Molly whispered more. Anna looked at her friend questioningly. We're going to have a cocktail first, Molly said. Then they'll give us a table. Wow, that's great. Anna exclaimed. The drink turned out to be delicious, went down easily, and only heightened the sense of fun brought on by the champagne they had at home. How great that we came here, Anna told her friend. Molly nodded. Just like our freshman year, right? Before Anna could reply, the club's manager approached them and offered to lead them to an available table. The girls entered a separate area and sat down at a cozy little table with two soft chairs, separated from their neighbors by semi-transparent curtains. It was clear that people at other tables were drinking, eating, and chatting. The girls ordered another round of cocktails, grabbed some snacks, sat for a while, had a drink, nibbled, chatted, and discussed the club. Then they headed to the center of the room. Suddenly, Anna remembered how she used to love dancing and realized she had forgotten when she last did it. There was something wild and primal about coming to a noisy place late at night, packed with unfamiliar, drunk, and cheerful people, and there, without paying attention to anyone else, dancing as you pleased, letting out all the anger, fatigue, and negativity that had built up over long weeks or even months. Anna got tired first. She shouted to Molly over the music that she was going to sit down. Her friend, who still had energy, nodded in understanding and continued dancing. Anna had almost reached her table when she suddenly felt a light push on her shoulder. She raised her head, ready to either apologize or express her annoyance, depending on the circumstances. "You?" Anna asked in surprise but quickly corrected herself. "I mean, you, Michael." The tall man she had bumped into turned out to be her boss. "Good evening, Anna," he smiled. "How do you like the club?" Anna frowned, suddenly remembering that she had told him which club she was going to tonight. "Are you following me?" she asked directly. Instead of embarrassment or justification, he simply smiled wider. "I just thought it would be nice to see you somewhere other than work. Since you won't agree to a date with me, I have to find you myself." "So, you mean stalking me?" "I've been here before, and I'm here with a friend tonight." "I see. Well, I'm glad you had a look. And I must say, you look lovely," he complimented. Anna shrugged, although she admitted to herself that it was nice to hear a compliment from him. "Have a good evening, Michael," she said and tried to walk past him. He took a step, blocking her path. "Wait," her boss said gently. "Let me at least treat you to a glass of wine." Anna raised her head, pursed her lips, and replied coldly, "Firstly, I'm having a gin cocktail, and I'd rather not mix drinks. Secondly, I have an open bar and kitchen tab, so I don't need any help with the bill. I'm offering not because I doubt your financial status. Come on, don't be stubborn, or am I that unpleasant to you?" His deep, dark gaze suddenly turned sad and serious. Anna's throat went dry. "I have to go, Michael," she said quietly and finally, after bypassing him, walked back to her table. Anna was afraid that he would follow her, but her boss stayed behind. She sank into her chair with relief and took a sip from her glass. The ice in her drink had already melted, so the taste was somewhat diluted and not very sweet. She frowned, placed the glass on the table, and sighed. Why on earth did this Michael come here for her? What's with this pursuit? She thought. "Missed me?" A cheerful voice rang out, and Molly, looking satisfied, plopped down into the chair opposite Anna. Her cheeks were flushed, her mascara was slightly smudged, and her hair was tousled. "I can see you had a good time dancing," Anna smiled. "Yay," Molly replied and quickly finished her cocktail, apparently not bothered by the melted ice. Anna opened her mouth, intending to tell Molly about her encounter with the boss, but Molly beat her to it. "Guess what?" she began. "I just met this amazing guy." "With whom?" Anna asked in horror, for some reason assuming it might be Michael. "What's his name?" "Derek," Molly answered, eliciting a quiet sigh of relief from her friend. "What makes him so great?" "He's handsome, intelligent, has a great sense of humor, and seems to earn quite well." "Hold on," and it interrupted with a laugh. "I left the dance floor about 15 minutes ago. How did you manage to find out so much about him?" Molly shrugged. "He approached me almost immediately, introduced himself, and we chatted for a bit," she said. Then, Molly shifted uncomfortably and looked at her friend with embarrassment. "Anna," she asked guiltily. Anna raised an eyebrow. She knew that tone Molly used only when she wanted to do something that Anna might not like. "What's up?" "I invited them to our table. You won't mind, will you?" "Who's them?" "He came here with a friend." Anna sighed. "All right, I don't mind. Maybe it'll help me get Michael out of my head, and he'll see that I'm sitting with guys at the same table and hopefully stop bothering me." However, it seemed that Anna's dreams were not meant to come true. A minute later, two attractive men joined their table. Meet, Molly cheerfully introduced them. Derek, meet Anna, my best friend. Derek turned out to be a cheerful guy with curly blonde hair down to his shoulders, broad shoulders, and a tattoo running all the way down his right arm. Pleasure to meet you, Anna said. And this is my friend Michael. Derek introduced his friend. Nice to meet you, Molly said. We've already met, Anna said coldly. Molly and Derek looked at her in surprise. Anna works at my company, Michael explained. What a coincidence, Molly exclaimed happily. But Anna could see that her brows were furrowed. It's not exactly a coincidence, Derek chimed in. Everyone turned to him. He cleared his throat and continued. We actually came to this club on purpose. Michael really wanted to talk to Anna, but it just didn't work out at work. So, Michael doesn't understand the word no, Molly asked with surprise. Anna regarded her friend with respect. In their duo, she was usually the one who was tougher, rougher, and more determined. Molly, on the other hand, was generally more compliant and gentle, unless you pushed her too far, and you could push her too far if you offended her best friend. Maybe this doesn't look as good as it should, Derek continued, but let me explain. Throughout all this time, Michael remained silent, calm, and almost looked sad as he gazed at Anna. We didn't want to inconvenience you. I happened to meet Molly by chance. I didn't know you were with Anna. Honestly, I didn't even know what Anna looked like. Michael was always talking about her. Anna, I'm sorry. Michael finally spoke. I really shouldn't have done this. I guess it does look like harassment from the outside. Yes, it does, Anna replied coldly. I'm sorry, he repeated. At that moment, the DJ announced the start of a slow dance. Derek immediately invited Molly to dance. She frowned but agreed nonetheless. Anna watched the departing couple and then stared at her hands folded on her lap. Do you want me to back off? Michael asked. Anna nodded. Yes, I agree. He sighed. But there's one condition. What is it? Go on 3 dates with me. Anna looked up at him in surprise. What? I promise that after the 3rd date, if you want, I'll leave you alone for good. Michael, what nonsense is this? Just leave me alone, and that's it. He shook his head. I can't, Anna, I can't. Why not? I really like you. Anna looked into his eyes. He appeared serious now, with no trace of his usual cheeky smile. I don't believe you, she said. We agreed to use first names, right? I don't believe you, she repeated. Fine, but you'll still have to work for me. If you agree to the date, I promise to back off if you wish. I'll stop noticing you once and for all. And if I refuse? Anna inquired. I won't give up trying to win you over. Anna sighed and rolled her eyes. Michael, maybe you should just stop noticing me right away. I won't change my mind. Not after 3 dates. Not after 33. Michael shrugged. Then you're not risking anything. You're impossible to argue with. Many people say that. Fine, Anna relented. Then order me something to eat and drink. I'm hungry. He chuckled. Okay, just so you know, this won't count as our first date. I already figured that out. Anna dryly replied. Strangely enough, the rest of the evening went wonderfully. Derek and Molly found common ground, and their cheerful atmosphere somehow infected Anna and Michael. Anna attributed her improved mood partly to having eaten. Food always had a calming effect on her. Later, they all danced a little more, had some drinks, chatted, and at the end of the night, the guys ordered a taxi for the girls and escorted them to the entrance. However, Anna woke up the next morning with a heavy head and a parched throat. Molly, she weakly called out towards the corridor. Could you bring some water, please? Get it yourself, came a similarly hoarse reply. I can't get up. For a while, the friends chatted, comparing notes on who suffered more from last night's drinking. Eventually, Anna sighed and went to the kitchen. There, she drank 2 glasses of water, finally starting to feel human again. Thinking she should help her friend too, she carried water to Molly. Thanks, you're the best, Molly said. We had such a great time yesterday. Great, Anna dryly replied, recalling the agreement about the 3 dates from the night before. I really liked Derek, Molly dreamily continued. I noticed, Anna remarked, and I noticed how nicely you were chatting with your boss. Oh, stop it, Anna waved her off. I can't stand him. Yesterday you didn't say that. That was temporary. Haha, we'll see. Anna heard her phone chirping in the room. A message, hi, how are you feeling? Of course, it was Michael. Anna frowned and replied, terrible. I'm really sorry. I hope your mood improves in 5 minutes. Anna couldn't help but snort and wrote, why would it suddenly? You'll see. Wait, he's not thinking of coming here, is he? Anna said aloud. Who's coming here? Molly quickly replied, I hope no one. And he answered gloomily. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Anna grumbled and went to answer it. However, instead of Michael, there stood a young man in a bright vest. Good day, he cheerfully said. Apartment 28. Yes, Anna replied, feeling flustered. Then this is for you. He handed over a large package. Sorry, but we didn't order anything. Everything is paid for. Then let's have it, Molly said, appearing behind Anna. She quickly reached out, skillfully grabbed the package, and rushed toward the kitchen. Enjoy your meal, the courier said. Thank you, goodbye, Anna replied, closed the door, and followed her friend. Wow, Molly exclaimed. Your boss is quite a catch. He knows how to win a woman over. The package contained soup, salad, pasta, and pastries. What a pleasant surprise. Molly continued to admire. Well, yes, he came up with a good idea. Anna admitted reluctantly. After the meal, Anna and Molly felt better. Maybe you should thank our savior, Molly suggested as they cleared the table. Okay, thanks, she sent a message. In response, she received, glad you liked it. Any plans for the day? Lying in bed and watching TV series. What if I offer a more interesting option? Have a great weekend, Michael. See you at work. Anna quickly muted her chat with her boss, stashed her phone in a drawer before changing her mind. Shall I turn it on? Molly asked. She was already sitting on the couch with the remote in her hand. Go ahead, Anna replied. After such audacity, going to work in the morning was quite intimidating for Anna. Deep down, she hoped that her boss would take offense at her blatant disregard and stop paying attention to her now. Without waiting for 3 dates, but something told her that the game was just beginning, and Michael wouldn't leave her alone so easily. She didn't see Michael during the first half of the day. She walked around in some tension, flinching at every step, and when she finally relaxed and went to the kitchen to have coffee, Michael entered. Fortunately, several other colleagues followed him. The boss politely greeted Anna and continued the interrupted conversation. Listening with half an ear, she realized that her boss had spent the weekend somewhere out of town at a nice resort. He seemed to be paying no attention to Anna, which was suspicious. Is he trying to show me that I've lost out by not agreeing to a date with him? But Michael acted as if he had forgotten about her, as if he hadn't been bothering her the entire previous week. Anna even felt a bit hurt. The next day, the same scenario repeated itself. The boss greeted her politely, asked how she was doing, and then went about his business. On one hand, Anna was relieved because she had wanted to shake him off herself, or had she changed her mind already? Because on the other hand, she had set herself up for more and was now disappointed by his swift retreat. Throughout the week, she waited, but Michael stuck to his tactics. I get it, I'm not interesting to him, Anna thought. She had already finished cleaning up, changed her clothes, and was now struggling with the key, trying to lock the staff room. The key seemed to be stuck and refused to turn. Anna was getting frustrated. What more do you want, you annoying piece of metal? She yelled in desperation. Need some help? Startled, Anna jumped. She turned around and saw her boss. Michael stood there, leaning against the wall, and judging by his relaxed posture, he had been watching her for a while. The key got stuck, Anna replied. He nodded, approached, and turned the key, which clicked, locking the door. Thanks, Anna said, taking the key. Goodbye. What are your plans for the weekend? He asked her from behind. Anna stopped but didn't turn her head. She shrugged, trying to make it look as casual as possible. I don't know yet. Maybe I'll go somewhere with Molly. Do some cleaning. Watch a TV series. Would you consider setting aside some time for our first date? Anna turned around and looked at him. Michael appeared completely relaxed but didn't smile. I thought you changed your mind, she said. Why would I change my mind? Anna opened her mouth to mention how he had been ignoring her all week. But then she reasoned that her boss might think she had only been thinking about him. All right, then let's meet on Saturday. Why not today? He ignored me all week, and now suddenly he wants to today. Anna fought and sighed. I'm tired after work. I want to come home, take a shower, and go to bed early. I understand, he said. Michael smiled warmly and affectionately. Well, I think it would be great if I give you a ride home. It will be faster. Anna shrugged with the most indifferent expression she could muster. I won't refuse. In Michael's car, there was a pleasant scent of leather, and it felt fresh. Anna comfortably settled into the soft seat and fastened her seatbelt. Safety first, Michael remarked. I liked that. He fastened his own seatbelt and started the car. Perhaps we can stop somewhere for dinner on the way, he suggested. Anna shook her head. No, thanks. I just want to go home. Understood. They remained silent for a while. You seem different today, Anna said pensively. How so? Michael inquired. Come, not pushing me. I've taken your words to heart. They arrived. Thanks for the ride. See you tomorrow. He laughed. As she exited the car and opened the entrance door to her building, Anna could still hear his laughter, but she didn't turn around. So, where are you going? Molly asked during breakfast when Anna told her about the upcoming date. Anna shrugged. I don't know. We didn't discuss it. Molly waved her hands in dismay. What do you mean you didn't discuss it? How are you planning to prepare? I didn't really think about it, Anna replied. What if he takes you to a horse race or underground dogfights or the most expensive restaurant in town? You understand that you need to prepare for each type of event. I understand, Anna sighed. I might as well text him. The response came almost immediately. It's a surprise. You can wear something casual, like a t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers. That's great. Molly chuckled. What are you dissatisfied with? That it still doesn't make anything clear, Anna said. But I like your advice. I'll try to relax. But my heart has a feeling that there's more to this. Well, today you'll find out everything, Molly said. For instance, that he's just playing around. Do you think there could be reasons to invite you on a date other than finding you attractive? Anna, you're beautiful, fun, and interesting. I'm a janitor. So what? Molly exclaimed. You're impossible. And you're a killjoy. The friends gave each other a disgruntled look. Molly broke the silence first. Will you wear your jeans or mine? She asked. Yours. They suit me better, Anna replied. I won't argue, Molly agreed. What about the t-shirt? What do you recommend? Mine, the white one. Okay, Anna nodded. Sneakers. Also yours. The sporty ones. So, today I'm sponsoring your outfit, Molly chuckled. As if it's the first time, Anna smiled. All right, consider me ready. Just wash your hair. Fine. Anna sighed and went to take a shower. As soon as she settled into the familiar leather-scented car, she immediately asked, So, where are we going? Michael's eyes sparkled mischievously. What? Afraid you made a fashion faux pas. You told me what to wear, so if anyone made a mistake, it's you. In logic, you're unbeatable. Yeah, logic was my favorite subject in janitor school. Michael let out a heavy sigh. Anna, please, stop it. Your job doesn't matter to me. What does matter to you? That you're intelligent, interesting, and fun. Am I all that? You are, and you're also cheeky, and I like that. Anna smirked. Do you often date janitors? First time. And how do you find it so far? I haven't figured it out yet, but after 3 dates, I think we'll both draw conclusions. For now, I suggest not dwelling on our social statuses and just enjoy the time together. Anna sighed. Arguing with him was utterly impossible. The only thing left was to follow his advice. As they chatted, the car had already left the city. Afterward, they drove for a while through the countryside and turned into a cottage settlement. Anna immediately noticed the well-maintained road, a security gate with a guard booth at the entrance, the height of the fences, and the size of the houses. Are we going to your country house? She asked her boss. To barbecue. He laughed. No, I don't own property here. At the end of the settlement, there's a nice eco-farm. You mentioned at the club that you love animals and would really like to get to know them better, but you haven't had the chance. In amazement, Anna's mouth dropped open. She hadn't expected this at all. "I said that?" she asked, feeling embarrassed. She did love animals, but her mother had always been against it, for some reason thinking that Anna would develop allergies. Then there was the orphanage, where she'd been to the zoo a few times, and later the rented apartment with owners who vehemently disagreed with pets. And here she was, sharing her cherished dream with a man she didn't trust and barely knew. Alcohol really was the devil. "We've arrived," Michael said. "Shall we go?" He quickly got out of the car, circled around to open Anna's door, and helped her out. They walked along a long fence and stopped at a wooden gate, where they were greeted by a pleasant woman in her 40s. "Good day," she greeted them. "Are you here for a tour?" "Yes, that's correct," Michael confirmed. "Come along, I'll show you everything. My name is Diane, and I'm the owner of this farm." "Pleasure to meet you," Michael and Anna politely replied. She opened the gate, and Anna saw true paradise. A neat, rustic wooden house surrounded by a garden. In the distance, there were spacious pens with animals. However, the animals weren't confined to the pens. First, on the porch of the house, they spotted a large, fluffy white cat nursing a whole litter of multicolored kittens. "May I touch them?" Anna asked, looking at the farm owner imploringly. Diane smiled and nodded. "Just approach slowly." Anna approached the cat cautiously, sat down slowly on the porch next to her, and gently stroked the animal's head. The cat looked suspiciously at Anna's hand but allowed her to pet her. "Well," Michael said, "she trusts you." Anna smiled. Turning her head, she saw several dogs chasing each other around the garden. "Shall we go to the dogs?" Michael suggested. "Sure." Petting the dogs proved to be a bit of a challenge. They were joyfully chasing each other among the trees and showed no interest in approaching. "Oh, they're quite playful right now," Diane said. "Until they calm down, they won't pay attention to anyone. Let's go see the goats and sheep for now." Anna gasped with delight. Growing up in the city, she found this side of life intriguing and enjoyed being in touch with it. Anna felt there was something attractive and authentic about a life like this, with a small farm close to nature. In a spacious pen, 2 snow-white goats with small horns roamed, along with a big bearded billy goat who looked rather sternly at Michael, and several equally white sheep. "I thought they would be fluffier," Anna remarked, referring to the nearly bald sheep. "They were recently sheared," the owner explained. "It's warm now, and with their thick, long wool, they'd be too hot." "I see. What do you say we continue exploring?" "I suggest we move on to the cows." "Let's do it." The cows appeared to Anna as large, contemplative, and somewhat relaxed creatures. The horses, on the other hand, were more approachable and playfully nudged her hand with their warm, moist noses. The pigs showed no interest in the guests and simply lounged in the shade under the roof of their pen. However, the chickens and turkeys suspiciously eyed the people, clucking skeptically and trying to move as far away as possible. "Now it's time for your lunch," Diane said cheerfully. She led them to an old wooden table nestled deep in the garden. Anna and Michael took their seats in comfortable wicker chairs. In the center of the table stood a massive antique samovar adorned with a string of small bells. Surrounding the samovar were dishes of pastries, jars of jam, and rolls. "Well," Anna exclaimed in admiration, "is all of this real?" The hostess laughed. "Yes, they are not props. You can again." Anna felt a bit embarrassed. "I meant, do you prepare all of this yourselves?" "My eldest daughter prepared it all. But yes, most of the ingredients are from our own farm. The potatoes and cabbage for the pastries are from our garden. The cottage cheese is made from the milk we get from our cow. The strawberry jam is made from our berries." "Well, enough of my chattering. Enjoy your meal." The woman left, and Anna looked up at Michael, noticing that he was giving her a thoughtful and scrutinizing look. "What?" she asked, puzzled. He shook his head and put on a smile. "Nothing. I just didn't expect you to enjoy this so much." "How could I not?" Anna replied in surprise. "Honestly, this is the best date of my life." "Even so, I'm flattered." "Did you enjoy it?" Anna asked. "I did, though I was mostly watching you." "Oh, now I feel awkward. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that." After lunch, they thanked their host and headed home. "If I schedule the next date for tomorrow, would that be too much?" Michael inquired. "I can't do tomorrow," Anna replied. "I have some commitments." Got it. How about next weekend? Deal. Anna's third week at her new job went more smoothly than the first, without the boss's initial indifference, but also without the overbearing attention of the second week. Michael communicated with her calmly and confidently but didn't become a nuisance. Yet, they exchanged messages frequently. "You look absolutely stunning today," he commented. Anna, who was at that moment vigorously trying to remove a particularly stubborn stain from under the dining table, smiled. "Oh, don't flatter me. I'm completely serious." "Michael, I was under the table, and you didn't even see my face. I saw another wonderful part of you." Anna rolled her eyes. "Yeah, very funny. In case you're wondering, it's not a joke. How's your day? Busy?" "No, the usual. And yours doesn't seem too great." "No, it's been busy. I'm currently in a meeting, and I'm about to fall asleep." Their work week passed in such sweet, seemingly insignificant exchanges. Anna found herself surprised at how her attitude toward her boss gradually changed. She now looked forward to his messages and hoped they would cross paths in the office, even for just a few seconds. "But, you know," she confided in Molly over dinner, "I still have the strange feeling of suspicion inside." Molly, usually an optimist who championed love in all its forms, responded unexpectedly seriously. "Think carefully about what this feeling might be. Lately, I've been more inclined to believe that intuition doesn't lie." "Intuition? Should I consult a fortune teller or an astrologer? Maybe they can check our compatibility based on our horoscopes." And equipped. Molly furrowed her brow. "I'm not talking about mysticism. It's got nothing to do with that." "So, you're saying intuition isn't mystical?" "No." "Then what is it?" Molly shrugged and gazed thoughtfully out of the window. "I think it's just a collection of the information your brain has processed but hasn't presented to your consciousness." "What do you mean?" "If we simplify it, it's what you notice and remember, and then use when making logical and well-founded decisions. There's also a bunch of sounds, scents, images, and the like that you've seen and heard but didn't consciously register. All of that accumulates somewhere in the depths of your subconscious, and occasionally, based on that information, conclusions are drawn, not as clear and straightforward judgments, but rather as those inexplainable feelings." "So, Anna clarified, are you saying that if something about Michael doesn't sit right with me, it's because my brain has detected some kind of danger and is warning me the best way it can?" Molly shrugged. "Maybe yes, maybe no." "Well, thank you, my friend. That was very enlightening." Molly sighed. "Well, sorry, I just don't know what to say. On one hand, I'm really happy for you. After all, millionaires don't pay attention to ordinary girls like us every day. I'm even a little envious, to be honest. But on the other hand, something doesn't seem right here. It makes me uneasy, and I'm worried about you. That's why I'm a bit apprehensive about how all this might end." Anna got up, circled the table, and hugged her friend tightly, despite Molly's protests. "Thank you, Molly. You're the best." "Why?" "Most people usually say what someone wants to hear, but you always speak your mind, and that means a lot to me." "That's because I care about you," Molly replied, barely breathing under Anna's embrace. "I care about you too, but I don't want to reject this opportunity. Who knows, maybe something good will come out of it. Of course, we can't rule out that possibility." "When's your second date?" Molly asked. "Tomorrow." "Another surprise." "Not this time. We're going hiking." "What?" Molly exclaimed. "I know, I didn't expect it either." "He has a rather unconventional idea of dates for a millionaire. That's for sure," Molly said, suddenly jumping up. "Hiking. You need a tent, a backpack, specialized footwear. Where are you going to get all that?" Anna burst into laughter. "It's not like we're going on a week-long mountain expedition. I'd call it more of a walk. We're just going a bit outside the city and taking a stroll along a tourist trail. It's an easy route that will only take a few hours. No special preparation required. Regular sneakers will do." Now it all makes sense to me. "I think he's a maniac," Molly said, and sighed and retrieved a bag of ice from the freezer. "Molly, don't lose your mind. He's not a maniac. You know that I'm going with him. Derek, his friend from the club where we met, seems to know about it too. By the way, how are you two doing? Are you still in touch?" "Not really. We exchanged a few messages after the club, wanted to meet up, but either I had a shift or he was working late. It just didn't work out. And aside, that's too bad. I thought he liked you. Me too, but I won't push it. If a man likes a woman, no matter how busy he is, he'll always find time for her. That's true. Uncle Joel used to tell me that all the time. And your boss still messages you all the time. And his lips involuntarily curled into a smile. Even when he's in a meeting, she added. At this point, she noticed that her friend was thoroughly disheartened. Molly, what's wrong? We'll find another guy. With my work schedule, that's unlikely, her friend sadly stated. We just need to hang out more often. Yeah, once your boss introduces you to the Secret Millionaires Club, we can join them. There's no Secret Millionaires Club, Anna replied. How do you know? I already asked him about it. The friends chuckled playfully. How much do you need to interact with a person to truly feel like you know them? To distinguish when they are telling the truth from when they are not. To say to yourself, I can trust them. These were the questions Anna pondered as she and Michael drove to the village where they needed to leave their car to begin their hike. The boss noticed that Anna was lost in thought and after a few unsuccessful attempts to distract her, simply focused on the road. We've arrived, he said when the car came to a stop. I hope you managed to sort out your thoughts because I can't handle 4 more hours of silence. Anna smiled. Can anyone ever sort out all the thoughts in their head? That's true. Then I'll just ask you to push them to the back and move me to the front. Deal. So, are you expecting us to chat non-stop for the entire hike? Absolutely. I want to get to know you better. Me too. I'm even ready to ask the first question. He made a welcoming gesture with his hand, and Anna started walking ahead on the trail. At first glance, there was nothing particularly challenging about it, a typical forest path leading deeper into the woods and slightly uphill. Anna couldn't help but have a passing thought about maniacs and such, but she quickly reassured herself that she hadn't noticed any weapons, shovels, or sacks in Michael's possession. Why are our dates so unusual? Honestly, I expected something more stereotypical. Maybe I'm sorry for asking such a question. He smirked oddly. Were you expecting a fancy restaurant, a yacht ride, a helicopter flight, and the like? Well, something along those lines. Maybe even a horse race and an opera. Understanding the reference to a famous movie, he chuckled. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Anna smiled. Quite the opposite. If you had taken me to a fancy restaurant, I wouldn't have known what to wear. I think you understand that. Plus, I wouldn't know how to behave there, and I'd spend the whole evening feeling nervous. But this eco-farm, it's simply marvelous. I really enjoyed it. When a childhood dream unexpectedly comes true, it's amazing. She tried to catch her boss's gaze, but for some reason, he was looking anywhere but at her. Then he quickened his pace, leaving Anna slightly behind. What do you think about the hiking idea? So far, it's great. I love nature, although I don't get to experience it often. I consider it a wonderful opportunity to spend time pleasantly and meaningfully. Well, I'm glad I could please you twice. For a while, they walked in silence, and Anna enjoyed the views that unfolded before them. The forest thinned out, and a narrow, babbling stream ran to their left, with a stony bottom. Low, twisted trees of an unknown variety lined the banks. How do you feel about uncomfortable questions? Michael suddenly asked. It depends on what you mean by uncomfortable. It's a broad term, something too personal, something that could make you feel ashamed, guilty, and the like. Anna pondered for a moment. It's hard to say. I don't recall anyone purposefully asking me those kinds of questions. I would like to. She pressed her lips together. I agree, under a few conditions. Wow, I didn't expect it to be so easy. Wait, you haven't heard the conditions yet. Anna stopped him. True. I can only imagine what devious thoughts are brewing in that bright, pretty head of yours. First, Anna began, ignoring his mocking tone. I reserve the right not to answer any questions I don't want to. That goes without saying. Second, I can also ask you similar questions in return. I didn't think about that, but it sounds fair. Great. Then we can start. Wait, I have a condition too. Another one. Fine, I'm listening. Answer me honestly. I'm always honest, or I'll stay silent. Deal. He stopped and extended his hand to Anna with the most serious expression. She shook his hand, and for a moment, he held hers in his, making Anna think he might pull her closer for a kiss, just like in romantic TV shows. But instead, he looked into her eyes attentively and then released her hand. "Let's keep going, and I'll ask you the first question," Michael said. "Otherwise, we won't make it before dark. Go ahead." They quickly walked up the trail, and Michael asked, "Why do you work as a cleaner?" "What do you mean? You're young, active, and not an intelligent. In theory, you could have already graduated from a prestigious institution, or at the very least, you could be studying at one." Anna immediately understood why Michael had issued that warning about questions. It was genuinely uncomfortable. Nevertheless, she had no intention of staying silent. "I didn't have the opportunity to get into a good college. I was an average student, didn't participate in major competitions, didn't win any scholarships. Basically, I had no advantages for admission. So, I understand. But you couldn't afford to pay for your education either, or ask your parents for help, for instance." Anna chuckled. "I'm an orphan. I've been in a children's home since I was 13. "Oh," he suddenly exclaimed. "That explains a lot." Anna felt her cheeks turning red. She suddenly realized the abyss that separated them. "There's nothing wrong with working as a cleaner," she said coldly. "Overall, no. Every job is in demand, and there are always people willing to do it for the money they're offered. But you mentioned having a nursing diploma. Didn't you study with Molly? She seems to be working as a nurse. Why did you take so many different jobs?" "Yeah, we graduated together. She's working, and I've changed hospitals a bunch of times. I didn't stay anywhere for long, and eventually, there were no employers left willing to take me in." "Interesting. Why did you change jobs so many times?" Anna shrugged. "It's my character. In my childhood, I was very soft and compliant, and my mom was the same, weak. Then she died, and I swore to myself that I wouldn't be so weak anymore and wouldn't let anyone mistreat me. So, that's why you're such a firecracker. But aren't you confusing the concepts of not letting anyone mistreat me and being rude to the boss?" Anna snorted. "Molly told me something similar. All right, let's leave the past behind. What about the future?" "What do you mean?" Suddenly, a strange assumption flashed through Anna's mind that Michael was already talking about their future together. She thought it might be a bit hasty, but at the same time, she was pleased that she had already made such an impression on him. However, it turned out that the boss was talking about something completely different. "You don't plan to work as a cleaner your whole life, do you? Where do you see yourself in a month, a year, 10 years?" "I don't know," she said. "I have no idea, and I try not to think about it. Right now, I just want to hold on to this job for a few more months, and we'll see from there." "Do you know where you'll be and what you'll be doing in 20 years? "Of course," much to her surprise, he replied calmly. "I've thought about the future, you could say, from an early age." "Then tell me about yourself. Maybe you'll inspire me." He pursed his lips but nodded. "I won't deny that I was luckier with my parents. My father handed down this company to me. No surprise there," Anna thought but didn't say out loud. "I was raised well by my father. He taught me that there should be a purpose in life. I didn't excel in my studies because what mattered most to me were not grades but knowledge that could be useful. I graduated from college in Europe and then started working in my father's company as a department manager." "A good start," Anna remarked. "I had enough experience and knowledge at that point. I worked, and they promoted me. When my father realized I was ready, he handed the company over to me. That's how it went." Anna snorted. "So, I guess you are comparing your path to mine, suggesting that I can achieve the same despite our vastly different starting points." "The starting point may be different, but I understand what I want and use the opportunities. Well, if my dad owned a company, maybe I'd use my opportunities too." Michael sighed heavily, as if he had been explaining something to a stubborn child for a long time. "Most people think the same way you do, and that's why they stay where they were. As cleaners. As an example." Anna quickened her pace ahead, trying to distance herself from him as much as possible. "Anna, wait." She heard her boss's voice, but she didn't turn back. He brought her here to humiliate her, to call her a failure, and all the while, he had the audacity to compare her to himself. implying that she could easily achieve what he had. A detestable spoiled rich kid. Anna, be careful, it's dangerous there. She wanted to turn around and shout something offensive at him but didn't get the chance. Her foot slipped on the wet moss, and she went tumbling down. Fortunately, the fall lasted only a few seconds, and she didn't have time to get scared. However, she hit the ground quite painfully on her right side, her elbow taking the brunt of it. She clutched her left hand to her right side, instinctively pulling her legs closer to her body. Anna, judging by the sounds, Michael was descending from somewhere above, or rather rolling down. Are you okay? His voice came from almost right by her ear a few seconds later. I'm fine, she said. Let me take a look at you for injuries, he almost tenderly requested. Out of the two of us, I actually have a medical education, so I can examine myself. Well, he noted cheerfully, what if you have a concussion? Then your self-examination might not be very objective. Oh, right, I'm just a dumb cleaner. Anna, please stop, don't be angry. He continued talking while deftly and cautiously feeling her arms, legs, head, and torso. When his hand touched the injured elbow and side, Anna hissed through her teeth. Can you stand? Yes, I can. Stop playing doctor. It's just bruises. Anna stood up. Yes, there will probably be bruises, but it's no big deal. She straightened up and started walking up. The slope she had fallen from wasn't very steep, and getting back on the trail wouldn't be too difficult. I didn't mean to offend you, conciliatorily said Michael, following from behind. You can't offend me, Anna snorted. I'm just genuinely interested in you and your life. He continued, and the questions I asked are very important to me. Really? Anna asked coldly. Jess, we don't have to revisit that topic, he replied. Yeah, I wouldn't want to, the girl agreed, especially since we'll never see eye to eye on it. That's true. He quietly muttered to himself and then added more loudly, we'll be halfway there soon. If you want, you can ask me something. Okay, she said after a moment of thought. Why do you need me? What do you mean? He replied, I told you, I like you. No, please don't lie to me. You understand perfectly well that our interactions make me very doubtful. I didn't know that, Michael said, but I can understand it. Although, to avoid any misunderstanding, why don't you tell me yourself? I'm an uneducated cleaner, and you're a successful millionaire. Any other questions? CEOs don't date cleaners. He chuckled in a peculiar manner. All right, he sighed, raising his hands with palms up, as if admitting defeat. I'll explain my motivation. Anna swallowed. Finally, he was going to confess the purpose of this strange, lengthy game. She both wanted and feared to know the truth. I've never had a shortage of women in my social circle. I've had various relationships, and they all ended in breakups. These were the daughters of my father's friends, university classmates, models, actresses, and salon and business owners, and in none of them did I find what I was looking for. Anna stayed silent, deciding not to interrupt and see where this was going. So, I thought, maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. In the end, what does it matter what my girlfriend does for a living and how much she earns? And it couldn't hold back and sarcastically said, so that's what I am. Your experimental subject. He looked at her seriously. We've arrived. Look down. Anna had been so distracted by Michael that she hadn't even noticed the trail had led to a small trampled clearing that merged into a cliff. From there, they had a view of a wide river, a suspension bridge, and the village where they had left their car. She stood there for a few minutes, enjoying the view. It looks like today we'll make a big loop, or rather, a loop. Michael commented. Michael nodded. Yes, we've reached the high point, and now we'll start descending back to the village. It'll be easier going downhill, but for now, I suggest taking a break. Good idea. I'm already hungry. Their boss took a thermos and sandwiches from his backpack. Did you prepare all of this yourself? Anna asked in surprise. No, it was my personal maid. I see. Michael rolled his eyes. Anna, of course, I did it myself. Pouring hot water over a tea bag and putting sliced cheese and sausage on bread are within my capabilities. She blushed. The tea is delicious, and the sandwiches too. Thank you, I made them with care. Apparently, the combination of the beautiful view, food, and rest had its effect, as Anna no longer felt like arguing. I'm ready to head back. she announced. All right, I'm ready to. The return journey was indeed easier and faster. For a while, Anna had considered remaining silent until they reached home, but her curiosity got the better of her. What were you planning to do next? Next, Michael seemed to not understand the question. Well, after the third date, what was your plan? He laughed. I'm starting to feel like a villain who must have a plan. Well, not a plan, thoughts. You know your life for the next 20 years, but when you invite a girl on a date, do you know what comes next? Dealing with women is slightly more complicated than work. Here, everything can change after just one date. That's for sure. Of course, I considered both possibilities. The one where you reject me. Then, as we agreed, I'll stop bothering you, and you'll work at my company as a regular employee, with no privileges like receiving funny videos from the boss. And it couldn't help but smile. So, what's the second option? She asked. Of course, to continue our communication, and for that, I have a specific plan. You can be sure of that. What is it? Anna inquired. I won't tell you that just yet. All right, Anna agreed. As they were descending toward the village, Michael spoke again. Do you have any plans for me? Anna raised her head in surprise and looked at him. We agreed that we could ask each other equally challenging questions, Michael noted. Fair enough, Anna said. But I don't have a plan at the moment. Sometimes I enjoy your company, and other times you irritate me. Wow, well, your lack of indifference is very pleasing to me, but I can't make any promises. They had reached their car. Anna, today was an amazing day. I was very happy to spend it with you, get to know you, and share about myself. Well, I found it quite interesting too, Anna replied, keeping her emotions in check. He chuckled. Shall we go? Let's go. Of course, the next day, Anna had to endure an interrogation from her friend. So, what's the deal? Molly asked, and she only asked this after Anna had recounted all the events of the previous day. What do you mean, what's the deal? Can you be a bit more specific with your question? Anna retorted. Molly just waved her hand. You've understood perfectly well. Do you believe him? Anna sighed. You know, as strange as it may sound, I do. It seems to me that if he had any ill intentions toward me, he wouldn't have asked such unpleasant questions. On the contrary, he would have pretended to be a head-over-heels billionaire, showering me with gifts. Valid point, her friend admitted, and it all seems so typical. And one more thing, Anna added, I think he's behaving sincerely, not trying to appear perfect. He's just being himself, a bit rough, cheeky, and straightforward. He acknowledges his flaws. I can see you like him, Molly observed. It seems so, Anna quietly admitted. Despite not showing it to Michael or her friend, Anna's mind was ablaze with doubts. She had grown accustomed to their constant communication, even if it was just through messages. She had enjoyed both of their dates immensely and was looking forward to the third one, happily imagining a future with him, a real one, just like in a Cinderella story. Over the next week, they communicated even more frequently and intimately. Michael and Anna continued to exchange messages. Furthermore, the boss often visited the kitchen, where Anna had to clean up regularly, or he would ask her to come to his office, claiming there was something that needed urgent tidying up. But in reality, they either chatted or shared coffee. Will rumors start circulating about us? Anna asked one day after another tea session. Michael raised an eyebrow. What kind of rumors? Anna rolled her eyes. You know perfectly well. I don't care, he responded. Anna sighed and felt her heart racing. It was so forbidden and exciting, and somehow very pleasant. If someone says anything unpleasant to you, come to me immediately, Michael calmly said. Or if someone says something bad about me. I've never complained to anyone, even when I was a teenager, Anna said. And I don't intend to now. I understand that you're a strong, independent woman, he said with a smile, but I need to be aware of what's happening in my company, especially when it concerns me and a girl I really like. Anna quickly lowered her eyes into her coffee cup, trying not to show how much those words affected her. By the way, I plan to make the third date just as you expected, Michael suddenly said. What do you mean? Anna asked. The kind of date that a girl dating a company owner should have. Anna laughed. Oh, if you're worried about the etiquette, don't be, he he said, looking at her closely. It will be just us. Great, Anna said. She hadn't even thought about etiquette. Would they be alone there? Interesting. And one more thing, Michael continued. Let me give you a gift. A gift? What kind? Anna asked. A dress and shoes. Anna blushed. But then again, why should she be surprised? She had told him herself last time that she had nothing suitable to wear. Maybe it was time to set her pride aside and accept what life was handing her. Okay, she replied slowly. I accept the gift. Thank you. Should I tell you my size? He smiled. I looked it up in your personnel file. Anna chuckled and slapped her forehead. Of course, they recorded it there to issue me a uniform. Exactly. I'll go. Of course, I'll be looking forward to our next meeting. So will I, Anna said quietly. Leaving the boss's office, she nearly collided with Kristen, a co-worker she had met on her very first day of work. Anna tried to wipe the smile off her face, but Kristen had clearly noticed everything. To Anna's surprise, Kristen didn't look at her with judgment or curiosity but rather with pity. The third date was scheduled for Saturday evening, and Molly was on duty that day. On one hand, Anna was glad that her friend wasn't bouncing around, bombarding her with excitement, dirty jokes, and innuendos. On the other hand, Molly's presence at least provided a distraction. Without her, Anna would have been left to her own devices all day. After lunch, the dress was delivered. It was evident that it was very expensive. It was a light, delicate, pearl-white gown that softly enveloped her figure down to her ankles, cascading in gentle folds and revealing a bit of her back. The shoes were equally ethereal, crafted from intertwined silvery straps with a small heel. I've never had such a beautiful dress and such beautiful shoes, Anna said aloud to herself, standing in front of the mirror, and maybe I never will again. Some inner voice told her that she might, if she continued to communicate with Michael. Anna shook her head, dismissing the thought. Money was nice, but she needed to choose with her heart. At that moment, her phone chimed. Good day. Everything fit? Michael asked. Anna felt her heart skip a beat, and her hands trembled. Thank you. Everything is perfect. Will you be ready by 6? Yes. Great. See you soon, dear. See you. This is where I could really use Molly, Anna said, addressing her absent friend. Molly was the best at doing her makeup and hair. All right, Anna told her reflection. Since Molly isn't here, I'll do something simple. She curled her hair into loose, casual waves and fashioned them into a voluminous bun. With a dress that exposed her back and neck, it looked stunning. Her makeup was subtle, merely accentuating her eyebrows and eyelashes. As Anna left her apartment, she felt like Cinderella on her way to the ball. Only, hopefully, there wouldn't be anyone at this ball besides her and the prince. You look absolutely stunning today, Michael said. It's all thanks to you, Anna replied. He shook his head. Metaphorically speaking, I merely created a setting that accentuates the beauty of the diamond. Anna smiled. Sounds awfully pompous, but it's still true. You look fantastic too. Thank you. Women rarely compliment men, so we remember them for a long time. I, for one, will always remember your words. And I'll probably remember this evening forever. I'll make sure of it. They drove through the evening city, and Anna's excitement grew. Where are we going? She asked. I rented a house outside the city. It's very quiet and beautiful there. I hope you'll like it. Indeed. Half an hour later, they left the city behind and continued along the evening highway. Have you been there before? Anna asked, trying to break the silence. Yes, Derek celebrated his birthday there once, and I liked the place. I thought I'd visit it again someday with a girlfriend. I forgot about it until you came along, and it reminded me. It was nice to hear that. We're almost there. Anna saw the tall gates swing open, revealing a wide path illuminated by lanterns made to resemble antique lamps. Michael stopped the car, helped Anna out, and led her to a large house bathed in the same soft light as the lanterns. However, they didn't go inside the house. Gently guiding her along a path that encircled the house, Anna saw a veranda with a set table. Well, she whispered. Have a seat, her boss said, pulling out a chair for her. Anna settled into the chair and curiously looked at Michael. You said it would be just the two of us. That's right. Then who's going to prepare the food? Me, you. You'll see for yourself. Michael entered the house, which was connected to the veranda by a door covered with a light fabric curtain, and returned with 2 large covered dishes. Duck with cranberry sauce, he announced solemnly, placing a plate in front of Anna. With your permission, I decided to start with the hot dish, but I'll also serve the salad right away. With pleasure, she replied. Your service is outstanding. We take good care of our dear guests. Dinner progressed smoothly. Anna felt calm, joyful, and occasionally embarrassed, catching admiring glances from Michael. The food was amazing. It was clear that Michael hadn't been the one at the stove. The meal was undoubtedly prepared in a restaurant, but it was no less delicious. They sipped on a light white wine, and even though Anna's head was starting to feel a bit light, she was thoroughly enjoying herself. I've never felt this good and relaxed before, she confessed to her boss. He smiled. So, I must be doing everything right. No doubt about it. Shall we take a little walk in the garden? I'm sure you'll like it. Let's go. They descended directly from the veranda into the garden, which was also illuminated by lanterns. Everything was well tended and beautiful. Neat pathways, flower beds with large fragrant flowers, and recognized only roses and lilies. The trees were evenly spaced apart, and the neatness and symmetry of it all provided a sense of tranquility and harmony. It's so beautiful here, Anne exclaimed. Yes, I had forgotten how nice it is. Michael nodded. It's like seeing it for the first time. You know, from a first glance, you wouldn't guess you could be this romantic. He smirked. And what did I seem like to you at first sight? Are you sure you are ready to hear the truth? Yes, no matter how cruel it might be, he said, taking her hand. Arrogant, cold, selfish, Anna said and looked at him, testing his reaction. In the light of the garden lanterns, she thought she saw a flicker of a villainous smirk on his face. Perhaps, to some extent, you're right, but I can be different. I've seen that. Most importantly, believe me, I believe you, Anna said quietly, almost inaudibly. After strolling through the garden, they returned to the veranda, where Michael poured more wine for them. I'll be quite tipsy, Anna said, more flirtatiously than seriously. No, you are far from that, her boss said. Don't forget, I saw you at the club. Anna blushed. I don't want to get that drunk tonight. I'm perfectly fine the way I am now. So am I, he agreed. He gently took her hand. Anna flinched but didn't pull away. I think it's time for us to talk. As you wish. This is our third date. I remember. He smiled. Then I'll ask you a few questions. Anna felt a shiver run down her spine but managed to put on her most composed expression and nodded. Do you want to continue communicating with me? He asked. Yes. Excellent. I'm glad, he said. And you? The question seemed to catch him off guard. Of course, we're continuing our communication in a romantic context. Yes. And one last question. Are we continuing tonight's date? Anna understood the significance of this question, and her heart sweetly ached with torment. Yes, she replied almost inaudibly. But of course, Michael heard her. He stood up gently, walked around the table, took her hand, and Anna stood up. He smiled, and without letting go of her hand, led her back into the house. Well, Molly practically bounced with excitement. Are you dating? Dating. Anna nodded happily. Hooray! Her friend cheered. I'm so happy. Me too, Anna said with a joyful smile. Is it official? Did he propose to you? Yes, he said it this morning. How romantic. And it happened on your third date, just like in the movies. Anna frowned. I'm not sure I like that. It seems too cliché. Oh, come on, cliché. Has anyone ever courted you so beautifully? No, Anna admitted. Well, there you go. The friends had breakfast, although it was more like lunchtime. Molly had just finished her shift, and Anna had brought Michael home. Sorry, dear, he said. I really don't want to leave you, but I promised to meet my mom during the day. It's been a while since I've seen her. No problem, Anna said with a smile, even though she didn't want to part with Michael. Molly eagerly sipped her coffee and grabbed a fresh poppy seed bun. Will you be working there? She asked. What do you mean? Anna didn't understand the question. Well, will you continue to work as a cleaner? Yes. Nobody has fired me, as far as I know. It just might look a bit odd, her friend explained. the owner of the company, and his girlfriend, who works as a cleaner. Anna frowned, but she had nothing to argue with. Well, I can't just quit. I still need the money. Hasn't he offered to support you? Molly asked briskly. We haven't discussed that, and besides, I'm not with him for the money. I understand that, but sometimes the status implies certain things. Stop it, Anna pleaded. All right, I won't. So, are you going to work tomorrow? Of course, Anna confidently replied, though, to be honest, she didn't feel any confidence inside. The girls finished breakfast in silence, and then Anna, sighing, finally confessed to her friend. You know, I'm so scared right now. It feels like I'm still afraid that this could all be a prank. Molly hugged her friend. My dear girl, why would you think that? I think you can be confident now that it's not just a joke. On the contrary, Anna said gloomily, I'm starting to think the opposite. Anyway, why torment myself? We'll see. Throughout the day, Michael didn't send any messages. Anna couldn't sit still and didn't let go of her phone for a moment. With each passing hour, she convinced herself more and more that her boss had achieved his goal and would now ignore her. She hardly slept at night, closing her eyes just before morning. Anna didn't immediately hear the alarm clock and woke up only when Molly knocked loudly on her bedroom door. Hey, friend, it's time to get up. I'm getting up. Anna weakly replied, trying to open her eyes and find her phone to turn off the annoying alarm. It took her a while, but she managed to get up and look in the mirror. The reflection showed a sad, pale girl with a swollen, tear-stained face. After her shower, she felt a bit better. She had some coffee, slowly ate yesterday's bun, and realized that no matter how much she delayed it, she had to go to work. Changing into her uniform was also a slow process. She went about cleaning as if on autopilot, sometimes not even noticing that she was covering the same area several times. Good morning. Suddenly, a voice she knew all too well echoed above her head. Startled, Anna dropped her cleaning cloth. Sorry, Michael said. I really didn't mean to scare you. She could only nod. The boss crouched down next to her. Are you getting a cold? He asked with concern. No, Anna replied. Why are you sitting on the floor? Someone might see. He shrugged. What does it matter? I'm the boss here. I can sit on the floor if I want to. Anna couldn't help but smile and stood up. He followed suit. I wanted to talk to you, Michael suddenly said in a serious tone. That's what I thought, Anna thought to herself, trying not to betray her nervousness or the tears welling up in her eyes. She got up and headed to the kitchen. At this time of day, there was still no one there. Michael obediently followed her. Anna turned away from him, filling the kettle while simultaneously trying to compose herself. I think you won't be able to work here anymore, he said. She nodded. It wouldn't be appropriate. The boss's girlfriend working as a cleaner. Michael looked at her quizzically. Are you okay with that? With what? Not working, Anna, Michael repeated. Did you not get enough sleep? Am I okay with quitting? Yes, fine, if that's what you want. Good. However, to ensure that my former employee and current girlfriend, through my fault, don't end up without money, I need to take certain measures. After saying this, he suddenly dropped to one knee in front of Anna and extended a red velvet box that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere in his hand. Marry me, Anna. At that moment, she noticed that almost half of the office was standing in the kitchen doorway, with Kristen leading the way. The situation was quite clear. However, Anna was surprised to see not joy or curiosity in her colleague's eyes, but something resembling fear. She didn't pay much attention to this at the time because her boss, who was still on one knee, was waiting for her answer. Well, she said very softly, we're still not very well acquainted. He shrugged calmly. I've learned everything I wanted to know about you. Do you have any doubts? At that moment, Anna desperately wished to become the Cinderella whose entire life's hardships are erased in one unbelievable fairy tale moment. She herself didn't understand how one short word escaped her lips. Yes. What happened next, she remembered vaguely. It seemed like her co-workers congratulated her and Michael, their faces a mix of astonishment and horror. Then Anna and her fiancé went to write her resignation, collect her final paycheck, and he drove her home. He talked about submitting the paperwork tomorrow and said he wanted the wedding to take place in a month. It appeared he also transferred some money to her bank account. Then he rushed off to work. Anna simply lay in bed and didn't move until late in the evening. That's how Molly found her when she returned from work. "What's wrong? Are you sick?" she asked in surprise. "No," Anna replied softly. "I'm just getting married." "Haha, funny. It's not a joke," Anna mumbled. "What? To whom?" "To Michael. Who else? The wedding is in a month." "Wait a minute." Her friend sat on the bed, touched Anna's forehead, and not finding any signs of a fever, became even more concerned. "Anna, what happened? And please, talk to me normally." Anna sighed. "Let's go to the kitchen and have some tea. Or better yet, something stronger." "Actually, that would be better." They found an already opened bottle of wine. Molly suspiciously sniffed the contents, then waved her hand. "Well, in case of an emergency, this will do." And it didn't even taste the wine. However, Molly wrinkled her nose. "It's sour." "Oh well, let's get to the point. What happened?" "Michael proposed to me. In the kitchen, you could say, in front of the entire office." "No way. And what did you say?" "I agreed." Anna's friend looked at her in surprise. "Anna, I understand passion, love, and emotions and all that, but is it not too soon? You two are barely acquainted." Anna shrugged. "I can't explain it myself. It just felt like a fairy tale. So strange. My second marriage proposal, and it's something bizarre again. Not like normal people." "Second?" Molly inquired. "When was the first one?" "You never told me about it." "That's because there wasn't much to tell," Anna said. "The first time, it was our neighbor Thomas who proposed." Thomas. Molly frowned. "I don't remember him. How old is he?" "We've been living in this apartment for a while, and our floor was mostly occupied by retirees." "Are you trying to tell me that you got a marriage proposal from the old man in apartment 102? That's something." As upset as Anna was at the moment, her friend managed to make her smile. "Well, you wouldn't know Thomas. It was a long time ago. I was living with my mom back then. Thomas was my age and our roommate in a communal apartment. He lived in the room next to mine. He dreamed of becoming a long-haul trucker. I remember when we were around 12 or 13. He proposed to me, saying we should get married when we grow up. I got flustered and responded quite rudely, telling him I'd marry him only if I had my head and stopped thinking straight. It was so silly." "Okay," her friend sighed. "There's no need to reminisce about that time when we have important matters to attend to right now. You need to decide what to do. At least you have time. You can change your mind. A wedding in a month. Why so fast?" "Michael really wants it." "What about you?" Molly asked. "I don't understand what's happening," Anna replied. Molly got up and paced around their small kitchen, visibly concerned. "Well, in any case, you're not obligated to marry him." "I know, but it seems like I want to." "Then should I congratulate you?" "Well, go ahead," Anna replied apathetically. "Well, congratulations." The following days unfolded in a very peculiar manner. Anna and Michael met every day. He took her to restaurants, movies, and she spent several nights at his apartment. It seemed like this time should have been the happiest in her life, with all the hardships and struggles behind her, and nothing but happiness ahead. But at the same time, she became increasingly uneasy about everything happening around her. She didn't involve herself in wedding preparations. Michael said that trained professionals would handle everything. Anna met with Kate, the wedding organizer, a few times. Kate incessantly chattered on about how everything would be top-notch. Anna didn't quite understand what that meant, and after a while, she gave up trying to figure it out. She decided to let things be. Another thing that bothered her was that Michael didn't introduce her to his close circle. They didn't meet his parents or friends at any parties where they could socialize with acquaintances of either of them. They only saw each other in private. "Why haven't you introduced me to your parents?" Anna cautiously asked one day. "We're getting married very quickly," he replied calmly. "I think it would be hard for them to accept it. It'll be better if you meet them at the wedding." "Do you think so?" Anna inquired. "I'm sure. I'll introduce you to everyone right away." "All right, I don't know what to argue about," Anna said. A strange sense of unease and unreality persisted. She tried to convince herself that everything was fine and that it was just her childhood habit of suspecting and constantly being in a state of struggle that wouldn't let her relax. However, One morning resolved all her doubts. The previous evening, she had stayed over at Michael's. They spent time together like any normal couple, eating pizza, watching TV series, and then having a wonderful night. In the morning, as usual, she headed to the shower, turned on the water, and was about to step under the blissfully hot streams when she remembered that she forgot to grab a towel. Without turning off the water, she left the bathroom and headed towards the bedroom where there was a big closet. Michael was standing on the balcony connected to the room where the closet was. Anna thought it would be great to sneak up behind him quietly and give him a hug. She moved through the room without making a sound and then suddenly heard his voice, realizing that he was on the phone. "Jess, of course, it will be a spectacular sight," Michael said. "They'll be discussing it for a long time." Anna froze. On one hand, eavesdropping was not proper, but on the other hand, she was curious about what he was discussing about their wedding. Of course, she suspects nothing. I'm the perfect actor. Her heart began to race. Yes, I think she'll go crazy for me. Or rather, she'll go crazy thinking about how amazing she is. Being a simple janitor, she managed to marry the company owner in a month. It'll be a splendid show. Yes, I'll invite all our obligatories for sure. There will hardly be anyone from her side. Yes, 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 she's an orphan. It's a classic. Or maybe she made it up. I haven't checked, to be honest. Anna's head was pounding. Her throat was dry, and all she wanted was to slip away as inconspicuously as possible. On her way back, she managed to silently grab a towel and retreated to the bathroom. There, she stood under scorching hot streams for a very long time, crying. But when her fiancé entered the bathroom, wondering why she was taking so long today since he needed to shower before work as well, Anna had already calmed down and managed to think about a few things. "I'm coming out," she said with a smile. He affectionately kissed her on the cheek and stepped into the shower. "It seems I won't have time to take you home before work," he yelled through the sound of water. "No problem," Anna replied just as loudly. "I'll take a taxi." Now that she had stopped working, Anna's life had turned into an endless waiting game. She waited for Molly to come home from work so she could talk to her. She waited for Michael to pick her up for another not-so-real date. That's how I lived, in anticipation. Anna gloomily thought, I did nothing with my life, thinking I'd just live in poverty like Cinderella, and then a prince would come and save me. Only, in reality, the prince turned out to be a monster, worse than the wicked stepmother. For a while, she just wandered around their small apartment, lost in thought. Then, she bit her lip and sat down at the laptop. That's how Molly found her. "What are you doing?" she asked in surprise. "Looking for a job," Anna replied. Molly raised an eyebrow. "Well, the rich have their quirks." Anna sighed. "I'll tell you everything now. Just promise me you'll stay strong." Molly nodded. Anna turned her head slightly and noticed that several people were filming them on their phones. Of course, this video would soon circulate all over the internet, and Michael would do anything to prevent that. Most likely, a few people had already gone live on social media. Well, that was perfectly fine with her. Anna cleared her throat discreetly, making sure her voice was steady, and began. "Yes, Michael, I have a couple of questions for you. Let's start with the first one. What made you think that you and your buddies here are the smartest ones around?" She relished the surprise on her ex-fiancé's face. "I must admit, I didn't immediately realize what you were up to." Anna noticed that a tight circle of guests was forming around them, listening intently. "I found it strange why suddenly the owner of a company, who's been portrayed as a villain on every job search website, decided to court a new cleaning lady." In her ex-boss's eyes, she saw her age. That was his true nature. "So, your point was that I'm just a fool who has spent her whole life waiting and hoping to snag a rich man. But you were not on my list, as you didn't give me a chance, convincing me to go on a date." "Oh, you weren't happy about it," he replied coldly. "Not at first," Anna nodded. "You were downright unpleasant to me, to put it mildly. That's putting it lightly. But then, you seemed to behave like a human being. You're quite the manipulator, Michael." She scanned the room, trying to gauge the mood of the guests. Some looked genuinely surprised, while those she identified as her fiancé's friends and their girlfriends appeared more fearful. Her gaze settled on Derek. His face was covered in red patches and glistening with sweat. He looked like he wanted to sink into the ground. An unconventional approach to dating. Impressive, really. A farm with costumes and horses, a home-cooked lunch, then a walk by the beautiful river, followed by self-made tea and sandwiches. Those were made by the housekeeper. The groom retorted icily. No doubt, and accounted. But of course, on the third date, you outdid yourself. Despite her determination, her voice wavered, but she quickly regained her composure. The Cinderella dress and shoes. Quite the cliché, but a safe bet. A secluded dinner on the veranda classic. And of course, you were convincing in your closeness. Well, I didn't have that much experience to judge. You know when and where you messed up? Anna asked in a colorless voice. I don't know, he replied with a flat tone. One morning, after I spent the night at your place, I managed to overhear a conversation. In that conversation, you bragged about what a magnificent actor you were and how you fooled your cleaning lady. She continued. Michael paled. At that time, it hurt, Anna said, her voice trembling once again. It hurt a lot, but I got through it. Now she could clearly see the horror and disdain on her ex-fiancé's face. Most of the guests, even his friends, looked embarrassed, and Derek seemed on the verge of tears. The groom himself stood there, pale, with tightly pressed lips. Suddenly, I realized that I knew too little about my fiancé, so I decided to do some Googling. It's strange why I didn't do it earlier, but as they say, better late than never. That's when I found out that my future husband is well known in certain circles for his peculiar and twisted pranks. And guess what? I became the main character in one of them without even trying. I'm sorry, Michael suddenly said, very quietly. Anna shook her head firmly. I haven't finished yet. In short, I thought that a little exposure like this might be beneficial for you. Please note that there are quite a few people recording us, and many will learn about you. He cleared his throat and said, I understand how foolish this was. She shrugged. You know, I don't really care anymore. Moreover, I've gained something good from this whole ordeal. Do you remember our unforgettable conversation during that trip? You instilled one important idea in me. Which one? He asked. That one shouldn't sit idle by and do nothing. Instead, one should take advantage of the opportunities that life presents. And I realized that my opportunity is you. Me. He looked at her with bewilderment. Judging by his expression, he didn't understand what she was talking about. Anna smiled sweetly. You're my precious failed fiancé. I've spent a long time thinking about what interesting things I can offer the world, and I've come to the conclusion that a despicable, unprincipled daddy's boy with an inflated ego like you is just the ticket. He stared at her with hatred. Everything you told me about yourself, Anna continued, was an outright lie. You barely finished school, and your university tried to expel you 3 times, but your father's money got you reinstated. Michael looked as though he was about to strike her, but Anna wasn't afraid. In the end, you were still expelled. You got your diploma from a local college. Well, God isn't the right word. It's more accurate to say that your father bought it for you. Anna heard laughter coming from the hall. Apparently, one of Michael's friends, who knew about this situation, confirmed her words. You claimed that you started working as a department head and successfully handled your responsibilities, but witnesses say otherwise. You knew nothing, understood nothing, and couldn't do anything. Others did all the work for you. That's not true. He weakly tried to object. It is true, Anna replied calmly. It's true. A drunken voice from the hall chimed in cheerfully. Michael, that's exactly how it was. You admitted yourself that you didn't understand a thing. Michael gave a malicious glare into the crowd but said nothing. One thing you were really good at, though, was partying, bossing around your subordinates, and inventing new forms of entertainment, with me becoming one of them. And it continued. Well, he finally said, you had your fair share of fun as well. I doubt anyone will ever pamper you as I did. Jess, I certainly hope not. Don't play the innocent lamb, he yelled, as if you didn't enjoy spending my money. Anna shrugged. You offered it yourself. You insisted I quit my job. You wanted to provide for me and pressured me into it. Well, from now on, your carefree life is over, he said. Carefree, deceitful life, Anna corrected. So, what are you going to do now? Michael mockingly asked. You won't even get hired as a janitor. I've found another job. Oh, really? What kind? Investigative journalist. And my first subject, as you may have guessed, is you. Everyone will hear about you. He frowned, still not comprehending what she was talking about. What are you talking about? She turned to the crowd and pointed to the multitude of phones aimed at them. We're being recorded. It's all going online, and then it'll turn into a big documentary. What? Have you gone mad? He took a step towards her, and Anna had to summon all her willpower to stand her ground. At that moment, Derek rushed to his friend and placed a hand on his shoulder. Michael, don't. The groom's face burned with anger, but he restrained himself. Anna straightened her back. It was nice meeting you, Michael. I hope we never see each other again. She slowly descended and walked through the dispersing crowd. There, Molly joined her, tightly squeezing her hand. You did great, her friend said. Anna nodded. Thank you. Her hands were trembling. Where to now? Molly asked. Back home. The investigation had made quite a buzz. Many had watched the video of the billionaire cynically toying with a simple cleaner. Wow, Molly exclaimed while reading comments under the video. Have you seen this? They are calling him everything under the sun. I've never heard such words, not even from the foulest-mouthed surgeons in the operating room. Yes, I've read a bit. There are some amusing suggestions about what to do with him. And you're not sorry for him. Anna shrugged. He won't face any consequences for this. Maybe a few angry comments. Perhaps a couple of acquaintances who are unaware of this might distance themselves. But I doubt his close friends and family will turn their backs on him. He won't lose his company, so nothing substantial will happen. Well, I'm not so sure, Molly said thoughtfully. I recently met with Derek. With Derek? Anna asked incredulously. The same Derek who walked me down the aisle at the wedding. Exactly. You're surprising me, Molly. Come on, her impatient friend exclaimed. Let me finish. Basically, he called me and asked for a meeting. Of course, I initially declined, but he was really insistent. And you agreed. You still like him, don't you? I get it. Anna, stop it. Well, yes, maybe I still like him a little, but mostly, I was just curious. So, he said he's no longer in touch with Michael. No way. He just cut ties with his best friend like that. Molly nodded. In real life, I won't believe he didn't know about all his nasty deeds, Anna said firmly, including what he did to me. He knew. Molly didn't deny it. After all, they'd been friends since childhood. Derek said he'd always tried to turn a blind eye to his friend's strange antics, and Michael always portrayed everything in a different light. How can you spin the humiliation of the woman you invited to marry you in a different light? Anne exclaimed indignantly. He said you were coming on to him, not giving him any space. Basically, that you were a gold digger. I see. Thanks to your performance, Derek realized what a scoundrel his friend really was. They are not in touch anymore. If that's true, I'm glad there's at least a glimmer of conscience left in Derek. He also told me that quite a few employees from the office where you both worked have resigned. Really? Yeah, they got tired of putting up with him and left. Can you believe it? And his father gave him a good talking to, saying he was tarnishing the company's reputation. Well, Anna said, it seems that my documentary did have an impact. Not just an impact, but a huge one. By the way, is the journalistic bureau that helped you with the documentary satisfied? A radiant smile appeared on Anna's face. Oh, yes. They said it's the most significant, or should I say our, investigation in the last 3 years, and they offered me a position on the editorial team. Why didn't you say anything? Molly exclaimed, hugging her friend. Yeah, now I'm a journalist. You'll be like an avenging angel, exposing people like Michael. Well, not only them. Women can be dishonest too. And then there are various stores, beauty salons, and all that. I think this is the best job for you, given your love for the truth. Of course, but I'll have to learn a lot. You'll learn. You have plenty of energy and intelligence. You know, Anna said thoughtfully, this Cinderella story has taught me a lot. Maybe I even owe Michael a thank you. What? Her friend exclaimed in surprise. If it weren't for him, I might still be working as a cleaner. All these events have been a powerful catalyst for me. Interesting. But that doesn't excuse his behavior. I agree. They fell silent for a moment, and then Molly looked mischievously at her friend. So, it looks like you're single again. We should go out to a club and find you a new fiancé. Or maybe we'll wait a couple of days and take a breather. Anna just waved her off. Not funny. I think, for the next 10 years, I don't want to date anyone. It's all about work, work, and more work now. It's time to make up for lost time. Romance and love, it seems, are not for me. Molly pointed a finger at her. Oh, don't make any hasty decisions. Anna didn't take her friend's words seriously. She had indeed decided that her love life was over, at least for a while, until she got back on her feet. Her new exciting job, colleagues who shared her adventurous spirit, completely different from Michael's intimidated subordinates, all made Anna's head spin. Every morning, she woke up with joyful anticipation of what the day would bring. What challenges would life throw her way? She was so happy that she felt like she was floating on air, which eventually got her into trouble. Jess, Gerald, I have the documents with me, but that's not all. Last night, I was chatting with a woman online. It's a long story, but it looks like we've found an important witness. I'll come to the office now and tell you everything. It's amazing, you'll see. Anna was so engrossed in her phone conversation that she didn't pay attention to her surroundings. There was a shout, followed by screeching brakes. Anna, who had stepped onto the road while the traffic light was red, froze in terror as a car approached her. The car came to a stop just half a meter from her. Anna, holding her breath, watched as a young man jumped out of the car and rushed toward her. "Are you okay?" he asked anxiously. "I'm so sorry. I was on the phone and didn't notice you." Anna looked at him with wide eyes, thinking that there couldn't be two people with so many freckles in the world, and that hair the brightest red she had ever seen. She smiled and interrupted the young man. "Thomas, didn't you recognize me?" Thomas looked closely at Anna and smiled as well. "What a coincidence. I didn't expect to run into you. I'm very glad." "I'm glad too." Anna sighed with relief and hugged the guy. "You have no idea, Thomas,